regular Board of County Commissioners meeting will now be called to order. We're to begin with a moment of silence, which we've followed by the Reverend Steve Jones from the Vero Christian Church for an invocation, and then will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to our greatest nation. Please rise. I ask you all for a moment of silence for all of our emergency responders. Thank you.
Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for this Board of County Commissioners and ask your blessing upon this meeting. Help them to faithfully discharge the leadership that you have entrusted to them. And may their deliberations and decisions contribute to our ability to lead peaceful and quiet lives in this county, lives marked by godliness and dignity. We know this pleases you. We also thank you, God, for our first responders and emergency workers and ask your blessing upon their efforts in their lives. We pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Please join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the greatest nation on earth, the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Thank you, Reverend. We'll now move on to some additions, deletions to the agenda and emergency items. There's been a request to move item 13D Delta to item 5A1, which would be the Florida Power and Light presentation, and follow up with the counselor, his item. And in addition, the clerk of the court has requested that his item be pulled, and it will probably be reposted, anticipated on June the 6th. Those are the two items.
Move agenda as amended.
That's a motion by Commissioner Solari, seconded by Commissioner Adams. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. We'll now move to the proclamations and presentations. A presentation by Bark Agents of Florida Power and Light, the External Affairs Manager, regarding the Florida Power and Light offer for the City of Vero Beach Electric. Good morning, Mr. Gagins.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Bart Getchins, Area External Affairs Manager for Florida Power and Light, 9001 Ellis Road, Melbourne. As many of you know, for years we have been working with the City of Vero Beach to bring lower electric bills, along with the other benefits of Florida Power and Light Company, to the city's electric system customers. There has been overwhelming support from the voters of the City of Vero Beach, from those customers outside the city limits, from you and the business community, and so many others. Together, we've all worked hard to get where we are today. That's why I'm pleased to stand before you today to present FPL's updated offer to purchase the city's electric system. I hope we can count on your continued support. Which button do I push? Oops. Thank you. All right, a little bit about the proposal. FPL is proposing a new offer of nearly $185 million for all of the City of Vero Beach electric utility customers and assets. The updated offer for the City of Vero Beach includes approximately $184.6 million cash offer for the electric utility. That includes $108 million that will be paid to the Florida Municipal Power Agency Authority, entitlements and additional risk that would be Vero's share. $20 million is for the Orlando Utility Commission's agreement buyout. $20 million would cover the City of Vero Beach's bond payoff. $20 million would be a cash payment made to the City of Vero Beach. $10 million for a prepayment for a 99-year lease for substation and land, and $6.6 million cash funding of the employee pension liability. This allows for complete termination of all existing FMPA and OUC contracts. benefits for both existing FPL customers and Vero Beach customers through the completion of this transaction. Our offer includes a payoff of the City of Vero Beach Electric Utility bond obligations, a one-time cash payment of $20 million, plus a prepayment of $10 million for the 99-year lease of that substation and the land, a franchise fee payments that we anticipate would be approximately $1.5 million a year in annual revenue to the City of Vero Beach, and the electric employees and pension. FPL will offer employment for the existing 65 City of Vero Beach electric utility employees based on their qualifications. The bargaining unit integration will be addressed by the FPL labor team. The City of Vero Beach employees are part of the Teamsters Union, and currently FPL is represented by the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. FPL will also pay the City of Vero Beach $6.6 million to fund the total pension liability for the transferred employees, and in total unencumbered cash benefit to the city in excess of $30 million plus the annual franchise fees. A little bit about the timeline. There are multiple approvals to get this through. The letter of intent is being presented today to the City of Vero Beach. The purchase and sale agreement is expected to be executed by August 2017. Then it will have to go to the FMPA for their approval, and then on to the Florida Public Service Commission, our regulatory body, and we anticipate about a 180-day approval time frame. To the FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, we anticipate that'll be a 90-day time frame, and the expected integration into FPL's system would take approximately 8 months. And then we anticipate the acquisition closing and flipping the switch around October 1st, 2018. We are continuing to work towards closing the date of October 2018 to bring lower electric bills to Vero Beach customers. Some of the next steps to the City of Vero Beach: the letter of intent to the City Council today. The letter of intent is a non-binding but allows negotiations, due diligence, and FMPA approvals to begin. Draft a purchase and sale agreement to share with the City of Vero Beach attorneys in the next few weeks. Then we would be seeking FMPA member approvals. Once the letter of intent is executed by the parties, FMPA can begin working with the member cities to gain their approval. And then finally, preparation of regulatory filings with the Florida Public Service Commission and the FERC regulatory approvals, which will be done in parallel. A little bit about Florida Power and Light and what our customers are provided with and what we can look forward to providing the City of Vero Beach electric utility customers. Our rates are among the lowest in the state and the nation. The typical residential bill is about 25% lower than the national average, about 20% lower than the city's current typical residential customer bill. We have world-class reliability, award-winning customer service, and our emissions, something we're very proud of because there is some rumor of pending federal legislation in 2030 that could put excise taxes on emissions, and we're already below what is being proposed. Our CO2 emission rate is about 30% cleaner than the national average. And of course, solar is something we're very proud of. Nearly 2,100 megawatts of new solar will be put into our system between the years of 2017 and 2023, and that includes 2 sites here in Indian River County, our Indian River Solar Project, along with the Blue Cypress Project, which will come online next year. That'll total 150 megawatts, which should take care of the needs of 30,000 customers. And that is my presentation, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Cage.
Mr. Chairman? Bart, just a couple things. On the OUC, I know the FMPA has to go to their member cities and they all have to approve, but has
Correct.
OUC agreed to the terms, the $20 million buy-off for their contract?
I don't think they've agreed to it yet.
Okay, so that'd
That
be
is
one
still
more
something.
process. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And then just a couple things when you talk about the benefits to the city, not only the franchise fee, but also their ad valorem tax roll will go up once the power
Property
plant
tax, yes, sir.
is valued as taxable property. So that'd be another benefit to the city on a recurring basis as well, too.
Good
So,
point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Anyone else?
A couple of items, just to remind everybody that every day, it's $54,000 every day, $22 million again this year exits Vero Beach and ends up elsewhere in higher electric costs to our customers. Florida Power and Light is currently our largest taxpayer in the county, paying right now currently about $2 million in annual property taxes. That is our largest fee payer of property taxes. So we're very appreciative of your current investment in the community. When the sale takes place, currently all the overhead lines, transformers, substations that are located in the county are not taxable at all. These will become taxable items, so we'll be looking at collecting future property taxes on millions of dollars of line and transformer and transmission equipment that will now become taxable, that will, the portions in the city will benefit the city, the portions in the county will benefit us. So we're very pleased with that. To kind of put it into real dollars and savings to county budgeting process, it's about $480,000 a year in annual savings where we sit looking at things today. Was on the phone with probably City of Vero Beach's largest customer, Piper Aircraft, where this year their electric bill alone will exceed $2 million. They would rather put savings into capital equipment and more jobs in less than their electric bill, and this will be something that will help them with that. And we appreciate all the jobs that they do create in the community, but we'd like to foster an environment where they can add more jobs and bring in more equipment into their plant. So obviously we're very excited about this. It's been a long time in the making, and we'll see where the next item goes, but very happy, and thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you.
8 years and millions of dollars later. Yes.
Hundreds of millions.
Yes. Counselor.
Thank you very much. I appreciate moving up the county attorney's item associated with the presentation. As Bart explained this morning, the City Council will be considering the letter of intent in a special call meeting beginning at 9:30 this morning. As noted in the attached resolution, the board has consistently supported the full sale of the electric system, and thus in this resolution urges the City Council to vote in favor of adopting the letter of intent. I did some research, and it appears that this board has adopted, this will be the 5th resolution in support of the full sale that has been adopted since 2011. If adopted by the board, the resolution will be presented to the City Council this morning at the special called meeting. The County Attorney's Office simply recommends approval of the resolution, and before voting on it, opening it up for any public comment if there is any. Thank you very much, and turn it back over to the chair.
Commissioners.
Mr. Chair, I'll go ahead and make a motion to adopt the resolution, but see if there's any public comment that wants to speak to this.
Second. Is there anybody from the public who wishes input on this item as we appear to be affecting a resolution? Seeing none? All in favor?
Aye.
To the chair, was that a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second by the chair?
That's correct, sir.
Thank you very much.
Right in the middle of that aye. I think we had 5 ayes. Let's do it again, folks. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That was unanimous. Thank you. At this
Thank you
time,
very much.
we will take a brief recess to sign the appropriate documents. Thank you, and the meeting will now be called back to order. I trust that the rather light attendance in the audience is that the show to be seen today is over at the City of Vero Beach.
Mr. Chairman, can we live stream that here in the video?
Do we have that capacity to do that? Oh. Oh. Well, we have to wait a little while until things get settled down and they actually receive the document and start the motions. With that, thank you. And speaking of light attendance, yesterday's law enforcement ceremony was not a light attended ceremony. It was well attended, but we wish that there were more there as well, as all of our law enforcement community, the families, have gotten together in the wreath placement ceremony, as it is our tradition here in Indian River County. I see the sheriff and the chief. Please, I'd like to re-represent the proclamation from this Board of County Commissioners. We had a very nice fitting ceremony, and I believe that the sheriff might want to speak a bit about the ceremony itself. But I'll move, Sheriff, to read the proclamation at hand. The proclamation recognizing May 14th through May 20th, 2017 as National Police Week. Whereas there are more than 900,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Indian River County Sheriff's Office and Indian River County Municipal Police Departments. And whereas in 1962, President John F. Kennedy signed a proclamation which designated May 15th as National Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the week in which that date falls on as National Police Week. Whereas on average, one law enforcement officer is killed in the line of duty somewhere in the United States every 61 hours. Since the first known line of duty death in 1791, more than 20,000 U.S. law enforcement officers have made the ultimate sacrifice. And whereas over the past decade, 2006 through 2015, the average annual number of officer fatalities has been 151. 135 law enforcement officers died in the line of duty in 2016. And whereas National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund honors and remembers those who have fallen law enforcement officers who have paid the ultimate price and given their lives to protect and serve. And whereas the service and sacrifice of all officers killed in the line of duty were honored during a wreath placement ceremony on the morning of May 15th at the Indian River County Courthouse. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that May 14th through May 20th, 2017 is recognized as National Police Week in honor of the service of law enforcement officers and our community and communities across the nation. And May 15th is recognized as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of all fallen officers and their families, and all U.S. flags will be flown at half-staff. Duly adopted the 16th day of May 2017, signed by all 5 county commissioners. Sheriff.
Well, thank you, Chairman, and it's very humbling, and on behalf of all of the men and women of the Indian River County Sheriff's Office, I say thank you for taking this opportunity. With me today is an opportunity to introduce our new undersheriff, Jim Harpering. You may recall that Chief Bud Spencer retired, and Jim is here to support the cause as well. We have a lot of activities going on today. We have several dignitaries in town, so I apologize for the folks that are not in attendance. But I will tell you that last year alone, we answered over 200,000 calls for service in Indian River County, law enforcement calls for service. Also keep in mind that, as you read, Chairman, the 900,000 law enforcement officers in our country, collectively, we in the United States of America answered 3 million calls for service a day, 3 million calls for service a day throughout our 50 states. But unfortunately, you read or hear on television the 2 worst incidents of the day. So thank you, and please keep our brave men and women in mind.
Sheriff, thank you so much.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate everything that our law enforcement officers are doing to ensure our safety. And I just want to note that in addition to that, the great relationship with our veterans too. Many of our veterans were there in support, as well as the sheriff's office and all law enforcement offices have supported our veterans to ensure that the people know the people who take care of us, to ensure that we can gather today, we can gather safely, and they take grave risk, and unfortunately, some of those individuals make that ultimate sacrifice.
Right.
And we hope that we don't have to meet again regarding it, but the statistics show that we will.
Unfortunately. But thank you for being there, Chair. We had a wonderful morning. A little warm, but it was a wonderful morning.
Yes, it
Thank you.
was.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Yeah, well, give one to the chief. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Sheriff, you want to? Scott's got mine.
Eric would be upset if you didn't get a picture.
You have him on detail. Thank you again, sir. Thank you to all our law enforcement officers. The next item on the agenda is a presentation proclamation designating the week of May 20th through May 26th as National Safe Boating Week. That'll be presented by Commissioner O'Brien, our Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we have Paul Harmon here, the Vice Commander, and maybe somebody else. So
Mark O'Connor.
if you gentlemen will come up to the podium, and I'll present the proclamation. Before I start, though, we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary from when 2 young boys were lost at sea at a Stewart. And I'm a boater myself. I have a boat I take out offshore fishing and diving quite often. And after that incident and the large search for him and the unsuccessful search, one of the things that came up was, a lot of things on the boat, coolers and such that you might be holding on to for flotation, are generally either white or blue. And it's hard for a search and rescue to pick those up in a blue ocean with white caps and such. And so one of the things we did personally to change our behavior after that was we went out and found a bright green luminescent cooler to keep on the boat. So hopefully that'd be something that'd be more visible if a search was ever needed. Also, I started wearing a bright orange, fluorescent orange or fluorescent lime green sun shirt. The wife was wearing a hot, bright pink shirt, and just little things like that, that if you ever have a problem at sea, you want to make sure that the folks looking for you can spot you in that churning ocean. So just a couple little simple things like that, though, I think can make a difference and prevent a tragedy and speed up or make sure of a successful rescue. So with that, proclamation designating the week of May 20th through May 26th, 2017 as National Safe Boating Week. Whereas recreational boating is fun and enjoyable, and the citizens and visitors of Indian River County are fortunate that we have sufficient waterway and ocean resources to accommodate a wide variety of pleasure boating activity. However, boating can be a risky activity to the unprepared. And whereas not knowing or obeying the nautical rules of the road, using alcohol or drugs while operating a boat, or choosing not to wear a life jacket are examples of very risky boating activity, often leading to disaster. On average, nearly 700 people die each year in boating-related accidents in the United States, with the preponderance of them occurring while using small open boats, 46%, and surprisingly 23% occurring with kayaks and canoes. And whereas knowledge and skills are important in reducing human error and improving judgment, so we must continue to spread the message of boating safety, not only during National Safe Boating Week, but also throughout the entire year. And whereas, thanks to the courageous women and men of the United States Coast Guard who serve our nation and are always ready to keep our citizens safe on the water, I encourage everyone to visit www.uscgboating.org to learn more about responsible boating. Together, we can enjoy the beauty and bounty of the water and avoid preventable death, injuries, and property damage. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Board of County Commissioners in Indian River County, Florida, hereby supports the goals of the North American Safe Boating Campaign, including the Wear It Life Jacket Program, and designate May 20 through May 26, 2017 as Safe Boating Week in Indian River County. And the board encourages all citizens who participate in boating activities to observe this occasion by learning more about safe boating practices and by taking advantage of boating safety education. Adopted 16th day of May, 2017, signed and endorsed by all 5 county commissioners. Gentlemen, a few words, please.
I want to thank the Board of Commissioners and thank you, Commissioner, for your remarks about what you do to keep yourself safe. Our numbers, as the chairman mentioned a little bit ago, are low, but we have several members this morning out working on a hurricane exercise with the EOC and the Coast Guard, and we do radio communications from Charleston, South Carolina to Miami in case there's a tragedy for a hurricane. So a lot of our members are out there this morning. But I want to thank everybody for your support. This Saturday we'll be at the Indian River County Mall for a life jacket awareness, and we'll be doing vessel exams, safety exams, which are free of charge to the folks that come up to the Riverside Park. And also on Friday is Wear Your Life Vest to Work Day. So if everybody would help us out with that, it's much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I am not a boat owner. Actually, hearing Wesley Davis when he was anticipated to be on the dais, but was out on a boat as we communicated with him as he was stranded, was enough for me to reconsider the boat ownership. But I'm proud to know that you're out there and in your education endeavors to ensure that there is great public safety with boat ownership. And I only wish that all boat owners would attend the courses that you provide and the service that you provide so that we can have a safer boating community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You gentlemen want a picture? Scott, could you? Oh, okay.
It's the Vero Beach Electric location. The beginning.
What? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you again. Once more again, please, Scott. Okay? Thank you. The next presentation proclamation will be designating May 29th through 2017 as Memorial Day. Commissioner Adams will present the proclamation. I believe Major Pilger is here, and we have quite a cast. Captain Dempsey, Colonel,
Sergeant?
We broke it into teams.
Oh, good.
Good strategy.
Divide and conquer. All right, it's my pleasure to read the proclamation. This is a proclamation designating May 29th, 2017 as Memorial Day. Whereas Memorial Day, originally called Decoration Day, is a day of remembrance for those who have died in our nation's service. And whereas Memorial Day was first observed on May 30th, 1868, when flowers were placed on the graves of Union and Confederate soldiers at Arlington National Cemetery. And whereas more than 15,000 veterans of all wars presently reside in Indian River County, which is host to 24 veteran organizations. And whereas on Memorial Day, we pause collectively for a moment of reverence, reflecting on the heroics of those who answered when called by their country to bear arms and to protect and preserve the ideals of democracy. And whereas Memorial Day is a cherished tradition in our nation, and its observance helps us appreciate our history, our values, and our responsibilities by reminding us that freedom is not free. And whereas the Veterans Council of Indian River County, consisting of 24 veteran organizations representing more than 15,000 veterans residing in the county, is holding the Memorial Day ceremony at Veterans Memorial Island Sanctuary, Monday, May 29th, 2017. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County, Florida, that May 29th, 2017 be designated as Memorial Day, and the board encourages all citizens to fly the American flag, to remember all service members who have paid the ultimate sacrifice, and to attend the Memorial Day ceremony at 8:45 a.m. at Veterans Memorial Island Sanctuary, Monday, May 29th, 2017. Adopted the 16th day of May, 2017, and signed by all 5 of the Board of County Commissioners. Thank you, guys. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what's going on that day?
Absolutely, and thank you, Commissioner Adams and Chairman. Thank you for having us today on behalf of the President of the Veterans Council, Colonel Sam Coons, U.S. Army retired, my fellow board members who are here with me today, as well as all of the Veterans Council. I thank you very much for this proclamation. You mentioned the date and the time, the 29th at 8:45, but I would encourage everyone to come early. We'll have a keynote speaker, of course, and the traditional military formalities and ceremonies. We're going to honor this year and have present on the dais young veterans from young veterans who have served in Afghanistan or Iraq, combat veterans, excuse me, and they will be our special guests that day. In addition, the first time ever, we're going to have a display around the island called Boots on the Ground. And this particular display honors those who have been killed in combat since 9/11 during the global war on terror. We're going to have a boot for approximately every 50 service members lost. There's been over 6,800 lost since 9/11. So it will be very moving, I'm certain. And while here in Indian River County, we probably have only a small handful, thank goodness, who have lost service members since 9/11. This will honor those across America. In addition, we'll have other special guests and entertainment. Of course, we'll have band and we'll have parade and review. We encourage everyone to please come early. Parking is always a little tricky, and you want time to walk out to the island. And in addition, bring your lawn chairs. We hope to see everyone there, and we thank you again from the bottom of our hearts for this proclamation.
Thank you, and thank you for your service, both of you.
Major, on behalf of the citizens of this great county, I want to say thank you for what you all have done so that we can be here today. But also, thank you for providing these ceremonies. You know, traditionally, when there is a ceremony, the honorees are the ones who sit back and indulge in the event. and the Veterans Council continually provides patriotic, veterans-oriented ceremonies so that we do not forget. We do not forget the service, we do not forget the losses and the cost of freedom. So thank you once again.
You're welcome.
Captain, I believe somebody else can operate that camera.
Good try, good try.
There we go. Now it's a team. Thank you again all. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Well, don't go too far, Colonel and Sergeant, as we have a presentation that we anticipate you giving us regarding an event that's coming up, the 3rd Annual Veterans Outreach Golf Tournament on Saturday, June the 17th. Very important day. Thank you. Colonel?
Oh, you want me to actually talk and say something?
Give him a mic. Can you come out of your shell a little bit? And
Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking. The tournament is great. We keep the price low for a reason, because we've got a lot of young people coming back, and we want to make sure they can afford it. We also have scholarships available for those that don't, and the counties said they will loan the golf clubs out for no charge. So there is really no excuse for some young person that wants to play golf, including the august body in front of me. If you would like to play, we can make that happen. We need the entertainment. So thank you all for coming. We look forward to it, and we'll be glad to have you. It's always a good event. It's the 3rd one. We fill out the 120 every time, and we will do it this time. People jump at it. I play with a group, and we came up with 26 people already, just in the little group I play with. So it's a great thing. It's a great honor. And it's kind of a fun relief from Memorial Day. So we're looking forward to it, and thank you for supporting us.
Sergeant? Oh,
Yeah, I'm
Got
next.
2 of them, please.
Yeah,
Sarge.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, again, we do appreciate you letting us be here today. To add on to what Colonel Zickert said, one thing we'd like right off the bat is your support. We know you always support the golf tournament. You know, we appreciate that in the past. We like to be able to get our poster and the dates and times on the couple boards that are around the county, one at the North County Pool and also the one on 58th at the fairground that shows the date and time, excuse me, of the event. It is a 3rd event, as Colonel Zickert stated. We fill the field up. It'll be a hot day like it always is, but it's an 8 o'clock shotgun start. We'll have a young lady who is the daughter of a veteran that's going to be singing the national anthem for us, and also several other songs for us, patriotic songs. So again, you know, we hope to see you guys out there. We're hoping for a full field, and thanks so much again for having us here.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. As Colonel Zickert and Sergeant James were saying, it does fill up quickly. We only have 120 spots, and last week when I spoke with Bella, we're already at 90. And that's not including some of the out-of-towners that are coming in from Team Red, White, and Blue. This is the Veterans Outreach Golf Tournament itself, but part of the proceeds also stay with the Veterans Council for our buses, also for us to repurchase new buses. I wanted to speak real quickly on behalf of the Veterans Outreach Program, something that I'm very proud of that we did. I also run the outreach program besides being the first vice president. Last year we got a grant from Grand Harbor, and Grand Harbor was kind enough to give us $9,000. So we decided what we were going to do with this grant was to go ahead into the community of Gifford and find some veterans out there that were either disabled or unable to do any work on their homes. We got into the community. We explained to them what we were doing and that we were going to hire either underemployed or unemployed veterans to help do this work and pay them a stipend. So with $9,000 that we got from Grand Harbor, believe it or not, we repainted, fixed, and repaired 8 homes in Gifford. And that's what we do with our money. So this is what it's going to, and this is what we tried to do. And it was, I think, a great accomplishment on behalf of the American Legion. Was it 181? 189 with Al Davis and Leon Barnwell. But if you guys get a chance to go out there, hopefully the Press Journal will get a hold of me. And I got some beautiful before and after pictures, and they are posted on our website. So hope to see you all out there. You guys are great to us, and we sincerely appreciate it.
It's our honor to assist the veterans who are helping veterans. And we've come a long way from just a few years ago when there were, we use the word parasites, coming into our community, taking dollars under the guise that they were helping veterans, and they were not. And the team has turned it all around. Veterans from Indian River County helping veterans in Indian River County, and the public is happy to support this concept and knowing that you're here and that you're helping the veterans of this county. I can't emphasize that enough, because it was just a few short years ago, was it not, Colonel? We had to make a move. So thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate everything you guys do. One more thing I forgot to add. I know that there's another golf tournament that day, and I know that that golf tournament is very, very important also. So I do understand if we don't see all the commissioners there, or Mr. Brown, you also, but if we could get a couple of you out there, the veterans love speaking to you guys, and they do have a great time. And I sincerely, I know the community will come together for both of these tournaments. So I'm very happy, and it's very dear to my heart also for the other tournaments, so I understand it.
Thank you for mentioning that. I will be there, but as Commissioner Bryan mentioned on Jackie Robinson Day, June the 17th was the day I walked up the aisle with my bride, so that's an important day. And we also have the Live Like Cole golf tournament, and we have the Veterans Golf Tournament. So we will be at all events at all times.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner, and God bless Rosemary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that was easy.
No, it's not another picture one. Thank you, veterans, once again. Now we'll move for the approval of the regular minutes for April 4th, regular meeting of April 11th, and the regular meeting of April 18th.
Second.
And that's a motion by Commissioner Adams, seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Informational items?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The informational items is the appointment of the member to the Indian River Lagoon Council. And one, I'd like to congratulate Commissioner Adams for you appointing her to be our representative there. I think Susan will do a wonderful job for us. I'm very excited about that. I do have a concern with the alternate appointment, which you've put yourself down as the alternate. And I think given the fact that you've voted twice against us joining the Indian River Lagoon Council, sends a bad message. And I think the representatives that we have to serve on that council should be those that have supported the decision and would be positively reacting and participating. And I think just having someone that's voted twice against joining the council just doesn't send the right message. And I think the will of the board is that we wanted to participate in the council, and it was the will of the board that I think we want to participate in a positive manner. And so I would just ask you to consider or to reconsider your appointment for the alternate position.
Well, if the obligation is to send in a cheerleader, then I will do that. But the obligation is to send somebody that will be a good steward for the betterment of Indian River County. And I appreciate that a biased and commented remark, because quite frankly, we send people to the Treasure Coast Regional Planning that are vehemently opposed to our involvement with the Treasure Coast Regional Planning. We look at many committees. For example, I appointed somebody to a committee in the Beach and Shores that, quite frankly, the commissioner comes from no possibility of a beach and shore within her community. There are many avenues that we select individuals for, and we have a greater trust for the greater good. We operate under the rule of law, we operate under a clear conscience, and we operate with dedication to service to the community. At no time did anyone say that the obligation that the Lagoon Council was bringing forward was not a meritorious one or a valid one. What was concerning was a layer of government. That will not interfere with any process that is going to give the good people of Indian River County an avenue to successfully gain a positive lagoon, a clean lagoon, a well-maintained lagoon. And I assure you that those decisions are going to be made purely on the value of what we need to accomplish and not the type of organization that it is. So I do appreciate your comment, though. Commissioner Solari.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that from my view with a lot of these committees, one of the problems is you have a self-selected group of people. The people who join the committees are already fully in support of what they're doing, and that often leads to a type of groupthink. So I think that a committee as large as the Indian River Council Lagoon Committee could easily accept and absorb somebody who is just a little bit skeptical on the margin. And so I find no problem with that. And the reality is, I think there are 4 meetings a year. I doubt that Commissioner Adams is going to miss one anyway. So it's going to be a moot point at the end of the day. A little skepticism with some of these bureaucratic groups is not out of order. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, because I believe it'll keep everything in line and tow and ensure that we're doing the right thing for the citizens of Indian River County, being good stewards and not getting involved with the entrails of a collateral loss through what's perceived as a gain. So again, I think it would be well examined, and Commissioner Solari brings up an excellent point that I don't believe that the Commissioner Adams will miss an opportunity to be able to be at the meetings. They are in Sebastian.
And I understand that, and I appreciate Commissioner Solari's comments, but I still believe it sends a bad message. And the folks I've talked to on the council are closely watching us. I think they still have some concerns about our commitment to this, and I just think this doesn't send the right message to them. But
And we could return the favor and closely watch them as well, because we are good stewards of the people of Indian River County, and we're entrusted to serve the community and not enable an organization to be able to have individuals there that are already aligned with whatever's got to be done. I'd rather see a prudent, well-deduced decision being made, and quite frankly, we don't know what the votes are going to be here. We have that little thing called the Sunshine Law. We don't know what the votes are going to be here at this county commission until we are speaking before the public. And there are many times where individuals that are serving on this board surprise themselves, surprise all of us, and surprise the community. And there have been many 3-2 votes that have gone in a different direction, all because of great citizen input. And I assure you that I cultivate great citizen input, and I will represent the citizens to the best that I can do for them in their best interest. But thank you again for your comments.
Mr. Chairman, I have one other comment to add on this same topic, more of a question to Dylan. What is the process? The appointment today is one of the many steps still yet to come. We are not, by the appointment of the designated representatives, does not mean we have a seat at the table yet. Or am I?
No, that is absolutely correct, Commissioner. The next steps are for the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program Board to vote unanimously in favor of the second amended agreement. At that point, the next step will be for that agreement to be recorded in the various counties, and then followed by Indian River County to pay its pro rata share of the membership fees for the remainder of the year. Once all of those different steps have been accomplished, then the Indian River County will be a member of the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program.
And would be a voting member probably starting at their August meeting? I mean, I know there's to be there at the June meeting.
Yes, they have requested a presence at the June meeting. However, the first meeting in which, if all the steps are taken, would be the August 11th meeting.
Okay, thank you for that explanation.
One comment. Let me just say that I appreciate everybody's comments. I think our goal as an entire board is to represent the community as best as we can. My intention is not to miss a meeting. They're already on my calendar months in advance, so everything else will have to be worked around that. And I look forward to representing the county on that board and bringing back to y'all what we talk about so everybody is fully abreast of what's going on there. So thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? On the consent agenda, commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull item 8G.
8G golf. Anything further from the board? Is there anybody from the audience that would like to pull any item for further discussion that appears on the consent agenda? Seeing none, commissioners?
Move to approve as amended.
And that's a motion by Commissioner Peter O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Susan Adams. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item G golf, Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just a filter replacement for one of our wastewater treatment plants, and I just pulled it because the filter we replaced, and it's an original equipment manufacturer. There's only one sole source for this particular filter, and the staff recommendation is to waive the requirement for bids and purchase it from the sole source supplier. So I just want to pull this to make sure that the public is fully aware of the waiving the requirement for bids. And if there's no one from the public that wishes to address this, I'll go ahead and move staff recommendation.
Second. Any further discussion? Anybody from the public wishing input? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item is public items. Is a public hearing, a request for authorization to submit FY 2017 grant application for 49 USC Chapter 53, Section 5307, Mass Transit Capital and Operating Assistance. This is administrative in nature, and good morning, Mr. Mattson.
Good morning. Phil Mattson, Indian River County MPO, and as is noted, this is a public hearing. So it's for our 5307 Transit Operating and Capital Grant, and this is the big player in our grant program. Basically, this provides $1.6 million in federal operating assistance that can be used to run the GO line and community coach, federal public transportation system. It needs a match of $1.6 million from non-federal sources. We're very fortunate here in Florida in that the state comes up with half of that local match. So $800,000 in our grant scheme has come up with DOT from a variety of grant sources. The county commission then comes up with the remaining share, or about $800,000 for operating the system. Capital, on the other hand, is 100% provided for by this grant, and the details are contained in the budget at the end. It includes replacement of rolling stock, things like bus stations, stops, terminals, security and surveillance equipment, and so forth. So how this program works, we don't get a direct allocation from the federal government. All these small urban areas are pooled together and given a target allocation of funding based on their size. So then we go to the governor, the state of Florida, DOT in this case, and they sub-allocate out from the pool to all these small urban areas. That's because some offer more transit services than others. Some small urban areas don't offer much transit service at all. As a result, we end up getting more of that pooled funds than we would have otherwise if it were targeted based on our population. So that's been a win-win. We've been doing that for about 15 years. We're asking for about $3.4 million in this application. We don't typically get that. We ask for a lot more than we want. The Gainesvilles and Tallahassees and the Vero Beaches of the world, Indian River counties, usually get a little bit more, and there's some smaller areas that don't offer much service that don't get it. Couple of quick facts on our system, a couple of updates. We do a lot with this money. We are the second lowest cost in both per trip and per mile. We tend to go back and forth with the evil empire up in Gainesville in terms of who provides the most cost-efficient system in the state. So hopefully we'll be regaining our crown next year because our ridership is up, whereas ridership's actually down in a couple of transit systems everywhere. I apologize to Gator fans everywhere. Not really. All right. We've had a flawless rollout of our main transit hub, and that was the big news recently. And that's due in no small part to the route planning that's been done by guys like Brian and the Go Line route planners, Chris Stevenson and so forth. Go Line put ambassadors on the buses to help with any confusion because we did change 8 routes. We put new stops in. That's part of the reason that we think we're going to see an increase in transit ridership. One of the advantages of the new hub is it's closer to our central service area than the old hub was at the airport. So I called over there, our contact, the transportation manager. How's it going? Do we have any complaints on the new system? And he said, no, actually we've only received 2, and one of them was from you, he told me. And what he was referring to is I got a call from a business that one of the locations we put for the stop sign was where he likes to park some of his equipment, and could we move it, and we did. So that's absolutely remarkable to move 8 transit routes and not get any ill will or any complaints from it. So like I said, we're looking forward to an increase in ridership. We serve areas that we didn't serve in the past, like Royal Palm Point, and more stops. I think we have about 14 new stops on the system, and we will need to open this up as a public hearing to get public comment so that we could proceed with our application. I'll be happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
Any questions of Mr. Mattson?
Just one short one. Phil, do we have an opening date of 34th Avenue so we can complete the rollout of the entire new route structure?
The paper said May 22nd, and I don't know how realistic that is. But yeah, when that does happen, what Commissioner Zork's referring to, our plan is to reserve the Vero Beach Airport, which we can't serve now because of the location of the new hub until 34th Avenue is open and that road job is complete. So I'll follow up on it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Anything further?
Public
Seeing
hearing?
none, we will now open this public hearing for public input. There are 2 podiums. Even though Phil is occupying one, you can move him out of the way.
Yield.
Nice yield, Phil.
Okay.
With that, seeing none and giving ample opportunity for the public to address the situation, we'll close that public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to move staff recommendation.
Second?
And that's a motion by Commissioner Solari, seconded by Commissioner Zork. Any further discussion amongst the board?
One that just, Phil, you need to become #1 again before the ranking for next year's cycle.
I think we will. Honestly, I think we'll get a little ridership bump out of this.
Good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next item, we have a public notice.
Thank you very much. We have a notice of a public hearing. This will be a public hearing for May 23rd, 2017. This is Robert Pritchett's request for abandonment of a right-of-way for a 16-foot wide alley running from 129th Court to 129th Street and lying immediately adjacent and contiguous to lots 1 through 10, Block 18 of the Town Site Plat of Roseland Subdivision. This will be legislative in nature, and again, this will be a public hearing for May 23rd. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Next item is County Administrator matters, which is the Indian River Shores property right of first refusal.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you all know, the Indian River Shores, the town of Indian River Shores held an auction on May 6th for the 5-acre parcel near Tracking Station Park, where the winning bid for that property was $4.4 million. The deed to that property includes a 90-day right of first refusal clause for the county, where we have the opportunity to have the right of first refusal. It does provide 90 days. During previous discussions with the town, they had asked that we expedite that and place that on today's agenda. We have done that. I will say, like many others, the town council has decided they'd rather be over at the city of Vero for their meeting today. But we do understand that they need to be at the FPL meeting. So I talked to Robbie Stabe, the town manager, about that and told him that I think we would be able to handle this in their absence today. With that said, staff is not recommending that we exercise our right of first refusal. I do want to add that there is a difference of opinions as to what price point that would attach at. County staff, I think, along with county attorney's opinion, that if we were interested in exercising that, it would exist at the $4.4 million price. The town has maintained that we would need to include the buyer's premium of 10%, which would take that up to $4,840,000. I just do want to bring that up. However, I think it would be a moot point given that staff is recommending that we do not exercise our right to purchase the property.
Thank you. Commissioners, any question of County Administrator?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have two. Currently, after we did our OPEB pay down of roughly $10 million last year, what remaining amount of unrestricted cash that's not pledged to bond debt servicing that we're required to keep, just roughly?
We are, depending on the fund, a little bit over the minimum at this point. I'm not sure exactly the dollar amount that we're over in the general fund. We do have a little bit of a surplus there,
but not a huge amount.
I don't think it's a substantial amount, and I would recommend that we hold that for some things like potentially paying debt down if we have an opportunity to do that.
Secondly, with the effects of the current legislative happenings in Tallahassee, where we're faced with now a significant multi-million-dollar revenue shortfall with the proposed change in the homestead exemption, what is our share estimated loss of revenue?
Okay, so countywide, including cities and special districts, I think that number is $5.2 million. Our share of that would be about $3 million. We anticipate a $3 million annual impact of the additional homestead exemption. If it passes, I do anticipate that it probably will pass as placed on the ballot.
Or who doesn't want free money, right? They just got to realize $3 million's got to come from somebody's job being eliminated, some service being eliminated, a library maybe not being as open as many hours, because $3 million is a lot of money. You know, we've made some good financial moves, paying down debt, OPEB expenses, which were very good and wise decisions that we made. We're not flush with cash, so it would be, I don't see how we could pay, not saying it's not a fair price for the property, it's just with looking on the horizon of 18 months out, losing $3 million of revenue, we've got services that we want to keep. We just agreed to fund children's services at a higher amount over the next 3 years. Do I want to maintain that commitment or add more park space? We do have a great park there. It would be nice if it was bigger, but we are financially constrained with what we have to work with.
I would agree. That's a great point. That's one of the things that went into the decision. We don't have a spare $4 million laying around that we have nothing else to do with. We did cut back significantly during the downturn. We're coming back. The tax roll has gone up, but you bring up a great point also about the potential additional homestead, which will cost us $3 million a year potentially. And we've got a lot of other needs, a lot of roofs that need to be replaced, a lot of vehicles, air conditioners. Just we're still in the period of catching up with some of the deferred items that we had to do to get through the downturn. So we've got a lot of other needs for any dollars that we have on hand.
Thank you for those answers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Jason, do you have the dollar amount for the unencumbered funds for the land acquisition?
We have essentially spent down the last land acquisition bond funds that were approved by the voters. I think we have about $30,000 left in that account, which is really set aside for some minor improvements, kiosks and trails and things like that, some initial improvements to property that we already have acquired. And I think, as we've talked about on this board, as Commissioner Solari in particular has brought up, we've got a lot of improvements that we committed to with the environmental lands that we already purchased, that we need to make those improvements. And I would say that would be a higher priority to improve what we already have before purchasing additional property.
Well, there's a tremendous bridge and gap there as far as 30,000 and the anticipated price.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, to follow up on Mr. Brown's, we have something close to $2.5 million of commitments to other agencies who help share the cost of buying these lands. My just ballpark guess is we have somewhere between another $2.5 to $5 million to bring, in a perfect world, of bringing these properties up to where we'd want to bring them. But just as importantly, if we're going to be good stewards of our own conservation lands, which we own today, we're going to have to probably, over the next years, and I think it's going to take us 5 years to get where we ought to be, increase the annual maintenance budget by a factor of 3 to 5. So I don't see how we could possibly go ahead and make a substantial purchase like this, which basically gives us an undeveloped piece of property with an implicit commitment to spend some millions more to develop it if we did, especially when it's located in a town where the city council just said no, they don't see a need for it. So again, home rules plays a small part in this, but I think it's wise for us to listen to, even if we disagree, which I actually disagree with that city council. If I were a resident, I'd probably want to have kept it, but I'm not going to put us in a financial danger in order to change the result that they actually put in motion. So, I mean, if you want some more discussion from the audience, it's fine, but I'd be happy to make a motion to refuse to exercise our right of refusal.
Commissioner O'Brien?
No comments, just, I can second your motion since I didn't hear anybody else.
That's a motion by Commissioner Solari, seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. But I would like to see if there's any public input. I see that some folks came today, and I believe it's regarding this decision.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Joseph Paladin, President of Black Swan Consulting, also President of Atlantic Coast Building. I want to disclose I was at the auction, and I did participate for my group on the bid. We did not win the bid. The group that won the bid, I'm familiar with them. I know some of the people involved personally. They're very reputable, very respectable. I support them winning the bid, and I support the county not exercising their first right of refusal. I think that's the best interest of everybody involved, and I think this group will do an outstanding job, and they are very reputable. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public?
Commissioners.
Good morning, Mr. Seuss.
My name is Bob Seuss. I live at 905 Surf Lane on the poor side of Indian River Shores. And I would appreciate it if nobody would tell the town council that I was here today, all right, because they're over there. My intent is not to have you buy this property today, but my original intent was to see, you've got 90 days. What's the rush? Maybe there is some funding available out there, maybe not. But your decision today would make sure that there wasn't any more funding available. Now, the sources that you would automatically go to or think would be the place would be the Trust for Public Lands, or Florida Forever. Well, the state legislature pretty much did a good job of gutting those, so that's not going to happen. The legislature also ignored the voter intent for Amendment 1. So we all know where the legislature stands on preserving land here in Florida. I really debated whether to even speak this morning because apparently about the only thing that we accomplished by delaying for 90 days would be Wesley not getting his check in a timely manner. And we certainly don't want to do that. But I do think that there's a bigger picture here than just this little piece of property, this 5.3 acre property in Indian River Shores. You've all read the history, at least I hope you have the history of this property and its original intent and how it's changed just because the town council decided they didn't want this to be in the public domain anymore. So they have the right to consider it surplus and get rid of it. Because who wants a vacant piece of property in Indian River Shores? My God. So I would wish that you would go ahead and at least give us the 90 days to see if there might be some other sources of funding. But frankly, I don't think that's realistic. So I think the bigger picture is the economy is getting better. So I think we better really watch out for the remaining land that we do have, the remaining green space, because the developers are back and they're looking for that kind of property. So fortunately, we had a group of folks long ago who realized the importance of McKee Botanical Gardens and saved it from becoming a shopping center, which is what it would have been today. Can you imagine what the coastline of the Indian River Lagoon would look like had it not been for the land trust? Can you imagine what the working waterfront in Sebastian would look like if it wasn't for a group of people in a grant that kept condos from being placed there, and now it's public use and it gets a lot of use? Susan and I remember when there was concern that Fellsmere might become Port St. Fellsmere, and fortunately because of the city council there, that's not going to happen. And I really believe that's not going to happen because you don't want it to happen. So anyway, I guess I wish that you would give the full 30 days in consideration and see if there might be some other funding available, but I don't think that's realistic. So I guess the only thing I could say is the developers are back, so watch your back. Thank you.
Well, Bob, I appreciate your comments throughout this entire process and your appearance today, being the man next door. And there's been a lot of public comment. I trust my fellow commissioners received that as well. There are some that lie on both ends of this decision, but I appreciate wanting to conserve the property. I appreciate wanting to leave it the way it is, and a land left unaltered, because once you alter it, it will not be ever unaltered again. It will take a lot of dollars to bring it back to where it is today. I understand that. Just a few comments. When Town Manager Robbie Stabe was at that same podium, he requested to know what type of response we would have. And I made the comment of, if you let us know by noon on Wednesday, we will have a response the following week, because they wanted to eliminate the right of first refusal. It did give us, and we're people of our word, it did give us ample opportunity to examine all fund avenues and resources with the county administrator to see if that could even be entertained today. We obviously only have about $30,000 left, as we referred to as possibly mulch money, and that is not truly enough dollars to even think about, okay, where can we find the balance? And then again, to go into assets that we are going to need. So many things have happened in Tallahassee that we are going to have to step up to the plate in so many different directions that it would be unconscionable to begin to derive some funding from from other sources that would not be customary. And looking at the customary avenues, we could not come up with any type of solution to the challenge, and that's why staff gave a strong recommendation not to. But as far as the timeliness, if we delay it for the days, then we would not be being held to our word, and we were committed on responding in a timely fashion. I do not know why the Shores wish to sell their property. They sold their property. We cannot get in the way of that. We can get in the way of possibly conserving it, but we really don't have the resources.
No, I understand that. And my whole point of standing here this morning is to say that we've lost this battle, but the war goes on. So,
and I think that they've made some concessions in the future design or anything that's proposed that might be there by the purchaser to ensure that there will be public access as we requested or directed, and that there will be some limitations. And I entrust that those folks that have used that manner to get there, although it will not be underneath the canopies, it will be in a direct access that will be safe and secure.
well, we'll see.
Mr. Chairman, Bob,
Thank
just,
you. Yes.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think any help from the state is slim to none, particularly the way they're going. And I don't think the county has the surplus funds available. But in talking to your neighbors, have any of them been talking about they pitching in to come up with the 4.8 million?
Well, like I say, we live in the poor side of Indian River Shores, so we don't really have that.
You're west of A1A, right?
No, east.
I thought
he's on the beach side.
Oh, you're on the beach side. Okay, I was thinking
south.
I was thinking all the Pebble Bay folks are on the west side. Okay, but has anybody talking about collectively as a citizens group coming up with the funds to purchase it?
That's a lot of Tupperware.
Certainly we've discussed it, but you know, nobody has that kind of money to just write a check or a group of checks. So.
The only, I just ask is, you know, if you said, yeah, you know, we can, then I'd say, okay, we'll wait 30 days. But, you know, if nobody's putting that together, then I don't see a reason to wait then.
Council, is not the right of first refusal for the county to be able to intercede or purchase or offer?
That is correct. It's the county has the county has the right of first refusal if the town ever decides to sell or otherwise dispose.
So it's our due diligence for the past
yeah, they
week.
just write a check to the county. That's all.
Wow. Okay.
If that's not happening, then that's just what I wanted to know.
No, and I don't want to delay it just for the sake of delaying it.
Right.
You know, that's not right either. So anyway, I appreciate your concern over this. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak regarding this topic? I'd like to thank all of the citizens who took the time to express their concerns and interest as we travel to the course of the unknown of what the offer would be. And we knew when it would be, but we did not know what it would be. And we have done our due diligence to make this decision today. So I want to thank you all. Commissioners, any further thoughts?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have two. One following up on what Commissioner O'Brien said. I think what you might have been referring to is what the moorings did when a developer was proposing a Publix down there.
Mhm.
The neighborhood said, hey, give us some time. What's your buyout number? And they came up with a number, and the community funded it and then built on it with a different use, but they just didn't want the Publix. They didn't want the commercial use. So those kind of formulas could work. And in this case, if there was a group that was on the horizon, we could have made the legal part of it probably work, but if there's not somebody on the other side working that angle.
And just to that point, Commissioner, very similar to what we did with the ball fields when
Right.
we knew that there were some citizen groups looking to put some funds together. We took a 6-week hiatus to allow that to be put together.
Right.
So that was my reasoning, that if there was some serious activity, then I'd be glad to step down for a few weeks. But again, if that's not getting put together, then there's no point.
Right, thank you. And also I'd like to say, on this particular piece, I don't see how we can make the numbers work without going back on some of the commitments we made for children's services and other groups. But if another piece of property comes up for some other purpose and there's a clear measurable benefit to the county, whether it's something economic development related or something, I'm not closed-minded to the county purchasing something in total. I don't see where I can make the numbers work on this particular one without, as Bob was at the podium, he's learned the love of Tallahassee that's gone on, and we all just, Speaker Corcoran, we just can't wait for him to leave. At least that's me personally. It's one thing to get your legs chopped off in a particular budget year, but to lose $3 million every year forever is that's going to be just a huge hit for us that we're going to have to figure out how to work within. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Solari, seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the collective bargaining agreement between Indian River County and the International Association of Firefighters, Local 2201.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, today we have before you a proposed agreement between the county and the International Association of Firefighters, or IAFF, that would cover a 3-year time period beginning last October and going through September 30th, 2019. The deal that we have reached and has been ratified by the union would provide a 3% general wage increase that would be retroactive to last October 1. That matches the same general wage increase provided to the Teamsters and the non-union employees. Also, an annual step amount on April 1st for those that are not topped out, as well as a $1,000 top-out bonus for years 1 and 2, and then a $1,200 top-out bonus for the final year of the agreement. The general wage increase is the 3% for this year that we're in, and then there would be reopeners for the wage increase for the next 2 years. Made some changes to provide additional incentive pays. As you know, the fire rescue is an evolving profession. There are more and more specialties going on, and that will provide some flexibility in providing those additional services. Also, a change to from the solo paramedic incentive program, transitioning to an ALS lead medic pay. Any folks that currently have the solo paramedic would continue that through the rest of their career under the proposal, but this is providing some additional dollars for the ALS lead, which is the way we'd like to provide those slots going forward. There's some increased wages there, and it also helps with some of the overtime and folks being able to get off and hopefully reduce the mandatory overtime that some have experienced for holding that certification. Also, some additional protective gear and equipment to store the protective gear that the employees have at a few of the stations that don't have that. Since we've been constructing new stations or renovating stations, we've been adding facilities to store that gear. Some of the facilities would need a substantial dollar amount of renovations or a new station to accomplish that, but we've provided some storage bins to do that. So that's the rundown of the impact of it and what you have before you. But I do want to say thank you to the board for the direction you provided. I want to say thank you to the management team who's worked very hard on this, and most of all, I'd like to thank the union membership and the union executive board. Particularly, we've got John O'Connor, Kevin DeLashmet, and Ricky Ridge here today, as well as the rest of the union negotiating team and all of the membership. I think they've had a cooperative effort here, and I think this is a positive thing going forward. I want to thank them for their efforts and working with county to reach an agreement, and I think this. The folks out there are doing a very important job every day, And I think this is something that's good for the relationship. As we know, we've had some challenges over the last several years. I think this is getting us going in the right direction, and I see this as a relationship of mutual respect. Above all else, we might not be able to agree on everything, and we can't, and we have to make sure that everything we're doing, we're mindful of the impact on the taxpayers. But I think a respectful, cooperative relationship between both of the parties going forward is I think where we are, and I want to thank them for that. And I think this is a good agreement for the employees and for the county.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Commissioners?
I seem to be chatty down here today.
Yes.
And how's that different from it?
Well,
Different
so
day.
the total cost for everything all in is how much? I mean, I know we've got the 609,000, 411,000. The other, I guess in just this current fiscal year, because I see we've got some top out and step increases for following years, but what would you put the price tag on the whole package?
Right. So the general wage increase is the 609,000. The steps in the top out is of 411,000. We've got some other dollars in there for the hood replacements and the solo paramedic slots, and the total cost estimated is $1,094,638, and that is the two big dollar items in particular. The general wage increase and the step are in line with what we've provided to our other employees, the Teamsters and the non-union employees this year.
Okay, thank you for that. And secondly, what's the difference between a COLA and a wage? To me, if your check's bigger, you got a raise, but calling, maybe it's splitting hairs, some call a COLA not a raise in a way, because we have wage reopeners. To me, that's not a COLA. So just to clarify, are these going to be booked as COLAs, or are they going to be booked as base wage increases?
So a COLA is cost of living adjustment, which is
Right.
which is set to be, largely inflation. It's very similar. It's just a slight change in terminology. They're both across the board.
Right.
A general wage increase is an across the board wage increase also. They both also increase each of the steps and move the ranges. So it's a change in terminology to really be more accurate. Sometimes you have, I always say the overriding factor is the inflation change, but sometimes there are other things going on in the marketplace where sometimes in order to be competitive, you may need to provide larger increases than inflation. There are other times, like when we went through the downturn, where we didn't provide any such increase, and you could make an argument that even during those downturns there was inflation in those years, but we didn't give that, and so it's kind of like an adjustment to a market-based factor if you want to look at a difference between the two. But they work the same way as far as how they impact the wages that the employees receive.
Okay. All right, just from meetings at the Taxpayers Association, a COLA is the cost of living. If you looked at what the people on Medicare, Medicaid, their COLA is not 3%. It's a much, much smaller number measured by federal statistics and other things. So, okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That stuff could be found in the book of acronyms. They have the whole.
Thank you,
Commissioner O'Brien.
Mr. Chairman. One of the things that I agree wholeheartedly with Jason said about the cooperation and everybody working together. I think this is a good contract. But to me, one of the most important key parts of it is it's effective retroactive back to October 1st. And just as a little brief review, if the board will remember, we had a closed meeting back in, I don't know, late February, I think, or early March. And we
Just a point of order.
Yeah, I'm just
Counselor.
not sure we want to go through the discussions that happened in the closed session.
We can't.
Talk in generality,
Yeah.
so we.
Well, what we offered at the next negotiating session.
I'd say maybe you may have given some direction to staff, maybe individually, or there.
Okay, let me rephrase.
Yeah.
At the March negotiating session, which I sat in, the team representing management put on the table that if we came to an agreement on the contract at that March negotiating session, then the contract would be retroactive to October 1st, and that was put forward by our management team. I was able to sit in on that meeting. That was a full, long day, and I think when we started, there was about 20 items that were still outstanding, and through a lot of hard work by both sides, the two negotiating teams got it down to about only 2 issues still outstanding, and one of those issues was the mandatory overtime. And unfortunately, we just kind of ran out of time then. And so at the next session in April, the 2 negotiating teams were able to resolve those last 2 remaining items. And because that was just kind of a continuation, that is why now we're going back to October 1st to make it retroactive. And I bring that up because I think it's important that the membership gets the raises they deserved. It also makes them eligible for the April deadline for step increases. And I think the men and women that serve in the firefighters are well deserved of those raises and merit increases. So I'm very pleased, and I hope the board will support this being retroactive to October 1st. And the other thing I'd like to point out is that over the last few months, we've had a couple of labor management meetings. These were kind of done usually with a union representative and then Assistant Chief Brian Burkeen. And those labor management meetings have been extremely productive in my mind. One of the big issues we tackled was there was a general order out there that I think a lot of the membership felt was too harsh. And through that labor management negotiations, they were able to resolve that issue and I think come up with a much better position on that. So I think that was outstanding. And the second big issue was the labor management group worked on the mandatory overtime. And I think all parties agreed that was an issue. It was broken and needed to be fixed. And through those labor management meetings, they were able to come up with a solution that I think both sides are very good with. So I just want to kind of emphasize, I think that there's been a lot of good progress between the union and our management team in working out these issues in a more cooperative manner. And so I'm very excited about that going forward. I know there's still some other issues we need to work on, but I think we're putting down the framework for a cooperative atmosphere to address those issues. And so I just think going forward, it's a good contract. It is for 3 years, and I think just a lot of good, positive steps have been taken. And so again, I just want to thank the union leadership and the members, and also our management team. I think everybody's worked very hard to work together and cooperatively, and I think bring forward what I think is a good contract. So I just want to thank everybody for their efforts.
Thank you.
And did I get in trouble, Dylan? Okay, good.
No, you just pushed the window on the whole shade thing. Commissioner Solari.
Push the shades aside.
I also agree it's a good contract, and I'm ready to go for a vote if somebody wants to make a motion.
Well, I'm very well pleased. I do see that the E-Board is here. Mr. President, I'm sure wishes to say a few words, and I want to give the opportunity to the public as well. Good morning, John O'Connor.
Morning, John O'Connor, President, IFF Local 2201. I just want to say thanks to the board, to Jason Brown, County Administrator, and Suzanne Boyle, HR Director, and the rest of the county's negotiating team. I agree. It was a long process, but I think that both parties have got an agreement that we both like. And then moving forward, we're both collectively just trying to make this a better place to work in a safer working environment. And moving forward, I'm optimistic, and hopefully we can continue this, this relationship. I even wore Gator colors for Jason, because I know he's a
What a
huge
sacrifice that was.
huge Gator fan. But
that's negotiation.
But looking forward to future negotiations and all types of other things that we're going to be coming across through our relationship for the next at least 10 years of my career. So, thank you.
I want to thank you for seeing the forest. And in years past, as I said earlier, it was about the tree. And it was the insistence of the tree existing and the root structure that the tree had. If you can appreciate the analogy, I think that the teams, all teams involved, did an admirable job in negotiating. And I think the word negotiating has been redefined. And I look forward to years of understanding the way this was set forth this year, not seeing all of the negative activity that people were feeling inside and their emotions. And yes, we did have a meeting or two, and then there was negotiation meetings, and then there was a discussion. But overall, this was a very nice negotiating season. So I want to thank you all of the membership, our board, our representatives, and say, let's go forward.
Yeah, we also appreciate you lending out Commissioner O'Brien. He's made himself available to a lot of our membership and talking about a lot of the non-economic issues that we have moving forward, and I think that's
Right.
a great step. And he was there during the negotiating process and made himself available to talk to our membership and to really kind of get an idea of what we're looking for and what's important to them, because at the end of the day, we're trying to, reduce the attrition rate and make, everybody happy. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go ahead and move that we approve the collective bargaining agreement between the county and the firefighters local 2201.
Second. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak regarding this decision? Mr. Johnson, good morning.
Bob Johnson, Carlin Subdivision. My question is, are our taxes going to go up because of the increase of the union agreement?
The contract begins in the year that we've already entered, so the taxes are set at that amount. We are planning to open an additional station next year, which will likely result in a slight tax rate increase. I think through attrition and tax roll growth, your normal wages are something that we can normally absorb in a rising tax roll environment.
The increase we're talking about, is that an ad valorem tax increase, or is that a taxing district increase?
The fire rescue services are supported by the separate dependent special district where we levy a millage rate. So that would be the rate that we're talking about. And we haven't finalized that. We're just working through that process for next year, and we will be presenting that at the budget workshops in July, the proposed tax rates for all of the county funds.
So we don't know whether this is going to cause a tax increase or not, is what you're saying?
We have not set the final budget or the tax rate for next year. I will say that these raises could be absorbed in a normal tax roll increase, if that's all we're looking at. I did want to point out that we're constructing a new fire station right now, and in order to staff that location will cost us about $1.8 million a year. So there may be a tax increase that's recommended for next year, but I would attribute that to the increased service location rather than raises in this contract.
But earlier, we decided not to sell the fire station which we were evacuating. Is that going to be sold? On 82nd?
We've actually relocated that, and that became Station 15. The funds for Station 14 are encumbered, but not the personnel funding. That's not encumbered at this point. Station 15 is not encumbered, but we have the temporary building that would have been sold for pennies on the dollar has been instituted to be Station 15, and we did have to add to the coffers to ensure that we had the best in personnel assigned for the
We
response
closed,
to the public.
we closed down one station. Is that,
Which-
those
which
personnel going to be transferred to the new station that's being built?
That's, I think you're talking about Station 7 on 82nd Avenue?
Right, correct.
So we relocated those folks there in a modular facility off of 90th Avenue, near State Road 60. So we still have those, the same personnel there. They're just at a different location.
So are any new personnel going to be added as a result of?
Not in that old station. Yeah, we moved the folks out of there. And we haven't made a final determination on the disposition of that station yet.
So we'll wait and see if our taxes are going to be added or increased or not.
I would say all else held equal, this contract wouldn't necessitate a tax increase next year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak regarding this decision on the IAFF 2201 contract? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor from Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by myself. Any further discussion on the board? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all who serve. We'll now take a brief recess. Welcome back. The meeting will now be called back to order, and we will hear from the Office of Management Budget on outside agency funding, policy revision, and requirement for grant sub-recipient agreements. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and the public. I'm here today, for the record, Michael Smykowski. I'm the Indian River County Budget Director. And I'm here today to address the outside agency funding policy revision and federal grant sub-recipient requirements. Before I plunge headlong into this item, which is fairly long, I want to talk a little bit about how did we get here. Well, the sub-recipient component was required as a result of our closeout meeting with the external auditors this year, and I'll talk about that further as we get into that component of the discussion. We also discussed with the external auditors, we had audit submittal deadline issues. Our review of the existing outside agency funding policy identified that we had standard grant agreements in place for Children's Services Council items, but not for tourist development items and the like, and I'll talk about that a little further, and we thought we probably ought to be consistent and have those. The review also revealed that we were beyond the 4-year funding limitation that the existing policy called for. So one thing kind of led to another. We were looking at the policy for the certain components that were addressed in the meeting with the external auditors, and that spawned some additional issues that were identified, and here we are today. There are many components to this agenda item. I'm going to try to break it down through the PowerPoint into smaller pieces to facilitate discussion and the staff recommendations as we walk through it rather than take them all at once.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Might we consider perhaps dividing it into at least 2 different motions and allowing us to hit the first one seems to me to be the one dealing with the timing of the nonprofits getting an audit. And if we took that one and got that one out of the way, we might be able to
Yes,
get
sir,
to.
and that's basically how I've
So-
structured the presentation. I've broken it down along the lines of requiring grant agreements for the other agencies. That would be one decision. I'll talk about what the current is, this audit submittal deadline, and then the funding issue
Yeah,
is
so if we
a
take the
separate
first 2 on one,
component.
because I think those are non-controversial, and I think we might end up forgetting about the first 2 by the time we finish going through the third one, so it might make it easier on both us and the public if we could break it down into those 2 votes.
That works fine, and it's actually the way I've kind of set up the PowerPoint. I thought I'd ease our way in. So without further ado, a synopsis of the outside agency. Okay, synopsis of the outside agency funding policy revisions, and I'll talk about them in greater detail, but requiring grant agreements for agencies receiving funding from Indian River County, an audit submittal deadline change, address the 4-year funding limitation, and address the funding availability issue. And then the separate issue is also the federal grant subrecipient requirements that I will talk about. Currently, an agreement, as I mentioned, is required for all agencies funded through the Children's Services. For consistency's sake, we recommend that we have standard grant agreements beginning in 2017-18, continuing with the Children's Services Council, but also adding the not-for-profit agencies, the quasi-nonprofit agencies, and tourist development agencies. The one exception to that would be the state agencies, which are things typically courts-related that are funded through the budget. The public defender, state attorney, and the like, you would not need a formal agreement. You just make the individual funding decisions in the general fund and various special revenue funds for those activities. So that is one recommendation, again, that you would include children's services, nonprofits, quasi-nonprofits, and tourist development, with the noted exception of the state agencies. In terms of the audit submittal deadline, the current language in the policy says if an agency receives $100,000 or more from Indian River County through all sources, they're required to have an audit completed by an independent CPA at the end of the agency's fiscal year. And submit that within 120 days to the Office of Management and Budget. And it also identifies that if an agency received a qualified opinion from its independent auditor, that would be reported to the board immediately, and funding would cease immediately. And also, you know, if we had any, the budget office had any questions or issues relative to financial statements, audit comments, that we be given the opportunity to request clarification from that agency. We did have an issue with Treasure Coast Homeless Services Council in terms of their fiscal year ends in December, and the requirement to complete within 120 days puts them kind of smack dab in the middle of tax season, which also would make their audit more expensive. So, so they've had an issue complying with the 120-day requirement. So we're recommended changing 120 days to 180 days, and that based on a written request, the budget office could extend the 180 days further, again, upon a written request justifying the extension, and if deemed to be in the best interest of the county, extension would typically not exceed 3 months from the original due date, and the same provision that if an agency received a qualified opinion from its independent auditor, that would be reported to the board and funding would cease immediately. So essentially you're changing 180 days from 120 days to 180 days, and then potential to extend that further if in the best interest of the county.
So if that, Mr. Chairman, if you'll accept the motion now, I'll move those first two items, which is basically the standard grant, and for me, more importantly, the revision to the timing of the audit. I think this is, as Mike said, this basically is simply going to allow the Treasure Coast Homeless Service Council and others, if they depend upon their fiscal year, to have a substantial saving on the cost of their audit, because they were able to push it into a time when which is after the April 15th deadline for one of their board members who acts as their auditor, that basically gives them a very steeply discounted.
And in terms of grant compliance to it, it also gives the auditor, you know, the check that was the audit received on a timely basis. Right now, it's not received within the 120-day period. So obviously, we would want for grant compliant purposes for the external auditor to be able to make that.
And basically, as I see these are both more or less procedural pieces, which brings the county in compliance, or the Treasure Coast in compliance with the county's needs, and doesn't impact anything in a substantial nature. So my motion is to go ahead with the staff recommendations.
So we have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Solari, seconded by myself. And is there further discussion on the board? Commissioner Zorc.
One, just a clarification of independent auditor. If they have an accounting firm that does their tax returns and their normal reporting, do they have to pick a third party, or can that entity also act as independent? So I don't know how far independent means, because if you have to go outside and then have another group, that really would throw their cost up, and I'd rather keep it simpler and less costly for them.
Jeff Smith, Indian River County Clerk and Comptroller. Yes, to have an audit, they're going to have it done by a CPA.
Right.
So if they just have their tax returns done by a non-CPA, then yes, they'll have to go to another entity to get that, and it has to be a CPA that's accredited in Florida to perform the audit.
So as long as if they currently have a CPA do their tax return filings and those things, that same entity can be considered an independent auditor.
That does not impair independence if they're doing the tax returns. That does not impair.
It would only be if they're using a non-CPA entity. And is there many of those out there? I would think that
there's a lot of there's enrolled agents that do tax returns for nonprofits. Yes, so
in that case, you'd have to.
I'm on a board of one that uses an enrolled agent instead of a CPA for their tax return. So if they had to have an audit, they'd have to go get a certified public accountant to do that. Yes.
Right. Okay.
And that independent auditor requirement is part of the existing policy as well. That is not a change.
That's not new. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Zorc. Anything further? All in favor?
To the chair, does the public have any comment on the contracts and the 180-day provision? I'm seeing nobody rushing to the podium.
There are two. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll move into the funding limitation. I'll talk first about the existing policy language, which is displayed on the screen. The intent all along was for nonprofit funding to be, as noted in the policy, it could be considered startup assistance to enable them to become established, that over time each agency would establish its own revenue stream separate and apart from public funds, and the A and B components of the existing policy were that in order to implement, the county would provide funding to an agency for a period of no more than 4 years, and that once they had received funding for 4 years, that agency would become ineligible to receive funding from county nonprofit funds. So that is the existing language. Here's a chart that shows the funding history in the adopted Indian River County budget, with the exception of senior services, which was funded were approved by budget amendment. You look, just walking down the line, the mental health has received funding since 2012, so 1, 2, 3, 6 years. The 2018 request would be a 7th year. The Food Outreach Center has received funding for 4 years. The 18 request would be a 5th year. 211 Palm Beach Treasure Coast has received funding for 5 years through FY 2017. The 2018 request would be a 6th year. And Senior Services had received funding for 6 years. There was recently a budget amendment approved at the last board meeting, or 2 meetings ago, for 2017. So they've had 6 years. So the areas in bold identify organizations that have been funded beyond the 4-year limitation, which are the majority of the organizations that are receiving funding under the nonprofit funding component within the general fund. The Cultural Council receives TDC money at this point. The one exception, a new request was received from the organization called For the Love of Pause for FY18. Items we're familiar with relative to other county actions relative to funding nonprofit agencies. There was a recent article through like Florida Association of Counties and like the county administrator receives regular updates on various news articles of interest relative to local government on any number of issues, some related to funding. In Brevard County, the proposal was to phase out. They fund just over $500,000 to 15 programs through 12 agencies, and that was recommended to be phased out over a 5-year period. They have a huge backlog in transportation, in over $100 million. And this 5-year phase out was a compromise to a plan that would have eliminated funding completely in next year's budget for 2018. In Collier County, we phased out, while I was budget director there, we phased out, it was called contract agency funding there. We did that over a 2-year period. Part of the discussion focused on, the commissioners, there was difficulties in selecting among many very worthy organizations, making funding decisions and having to choose between, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, the drug abuse hotline, the rape crisis hotline, any number of issues like that is a difficult thing. And there were also plenty of folks in the audience who discussed focused on not making charitable contributions with taxpayer funds, that they felt as an individual, if they wanted to fund a charitable nonprofit organization, that was their personal decision, but some members of the public spoke out and said, we didn't feel that this should be done with taxpayer money, that you're making charitable donation decisions with taxpayer funds, and we think that's bad policy. Relative to options for funding nonprofit agencies, option 1 is you'd waive the 4-year funding limitation and provide funding in 2018 to currently funded organizations at the FY17 funding levels as noted below. The senior services, which includes Meals on Wheels, adult aging, and Meals on Wheels, adult daycare, and in-home services. That's at the amended budget level from FY16, so it would be a total of $159,707. For the recommendation, no new agencies would be considered for funding in 2018. As I noted previously, For the Love of Pause submitted a request for $11,110. And we would eliminate nonprofit agency funding in 2018-19 and thereafter. And the further recommendation then would be for the county attorney to update the outside agency funding policy to reflect final board policy decisions and make any ministerial edits as necessary. I'd like to walk through the second option and the staff recommendation, and then I think you might want to discuss and perhaps hear from the public, but I'll defer to the chair on that. Option 2, relative to funding nonprofit agencies, would propose to grandfather the existing nonprofit agencies receiving funding at their current levels. Funding would be capped at this level in future years. Again, it's the $159,707, same as in option 1, except that it would be grandfathering those. Again, you'd be not funding any new agencies unless they qualified for quasi-nonprofit. And the county attorney would update the agency funding policy to reflect final board decisions, and again, make any ministerial edits to the backup that was provided in the agenda package. The staff recommendation is option 1, is relative to funding nonprofits. Again, waiving the 4-year funding limitation, provide funding to currently funded organizations. No new agencies would be considered for funding. It would eliminate nonprofit agency funding in the 2018-19, so it would provide 1 year of additional transition. But again, as I noted previously, many of the organizations were funded well beyond the 4-year limitation that the policy talked about. Beyond FY 2019, it would eliminate nonprofit agency funding, and again, the county attorney would make necessary edits reflecting final board policy decisions. So that is where we're at relative to the funding for nonprofits. I'm sure. Pardon?
And that's option 1.
Yes, staff recommendation is option 1. Yeah, option 2 is the grandfathering. Sorry. Yes, so again, let me go through that one more time. Option 1 would fund existing organizations at the FY17 levels for 1 more year, and then eliminate nonprofit in 2018-19 and thereafter. Option 2 would grandfather the existing nonprofit agencies receiving funding. Funding would be capped at this level in future years. So that would allow a continuation at the existing funding levels versus option 1, which provides funding for 1 more year, allowing that transition year to identify alternative funding sources, and it would eliminate funding moving forward beyond FY 2018. That would be the last year of funding nonprofits.
Thank you, Michael. That concludes the presentation.
For this part, and then we still have to talk about the federal requirements, the
Right.
subrecipients.
Next level.
But I think we're at a stopping point here that we're
Yes.
entertain discussion from the board members and/or members of the public.
Commissioner Solari.
So first of all, I want to thank Mike for his presentation. I thought it was very well done. He took something difficult and made it, I think, very understandable. And I am extremely sympathetic to the idea that the government shouldn't get involved in funding charities. However, the way he presented it, all 4 of the agencies there basically deal with about the most vulnerable groups of citizens in our community.
Yes.
I mean, I'm really happy you took the dogs from paws out. I absolutely love dogs. Dogs are great. I'm happy for all the people in Indian River County who have dogs. I don't think it's appropriate for the government to take people's tax dollars and give them to support dogs. But I'm also, it turns out that I'm familiar pretty well with each one of the 4 agencies. So even though I appreciate the workforce staff recommendation number 1, I'm going to support staff recommendation number 2 with 1 small change, and that be that the dollar amounts that you have listed in the staff report, which begins with the mental health walk-in clinic at $22,500 down to the total of $159,707, be adjusted for the standard rate of inflation that we use in the county on an annual basis, so that these amounts are frozen in real terms but not in nominal terms, so that we end up at least allowing the nonprofits to provide essentially the same services that they do today going forward. So I don't know if, I see a couple shaking heads, so I'm going to make that in the form of a motion to go with staff recommendation with the one change that we, whatever, there's some southern blah, 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 COLA thing that I know Jason usually uses, and that's fine with me that we use that and adjust these figures annually so that we end up giving these dollar amounts in real and not nominal terms.
Right,
That's
because
option
staff
two.
recommendation was option 1.
Yes, so I'm not going with staff recommendation, I'm going, no,
Option two.
I just wanted to tell Mike, I appreciate the work he did in option 1, but I'm, given all things here, I'm going to go with option 2 with the one
With the
modification.
inflation factor.
Right.
We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Solari, which was seconded multiply. Susan Adams is the second. We have further discussion on this there. Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you. No, I fully support Commissioner Solari, his motion. That was exactly along the lines I was thinking, and so I'm very good with that. And I think it, for the most part, these agencies provide a service that no one else in the county does. And so I look at them more as essential services than any other type of fluff or frill. So, and I'm glad Commissioner Solari put in the inflation factor, because I was looking at maybe just bumping, if we're going to fix these amounts, I was thinking, well, let's, start now with a little bit higher to take that into account, but an inflation adjustment, I think, is a good way to go as well. So I'm very supportive of the motion.
I agree with the other commissioners on this. I think if not but for these groups, we would have to provide these services, so it's a good use of our money, and that return on investment just makes it worthwhile. I appreciate Commissioner Solari's amendment to that and the inflation factor, so looking forward to moving this forward.
Commissioner Zoll.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and agree with the other comments. I was just doing some rough math on the $22,000 for mental health. That probably represents, in excess of 250 to 300 walk-in type treatments using an allocation for services. And we want to make sure that those services are available for those folks when they get there. The good work that Harvest Food and Outreach do, senior services there, it is a service being run by a nonprofit, but they are not necessarily 100% essential services, but they're very, very much needed to reach that segment of the population. I would like to say, I know the Love of Paws is in this for those that have the passion for pets. They're a great entity for folks to support with their own dollars. They do some great work, especially a lot of them the cars follow the Meals on Wheels delivery. The Love of Paws folks are right behind, so they do some great work. So maybe we get some individuals to look at helping support with that. But I think that the option 2 with the would this be using the IAFF rider or the real one that the
No, I specified the one that Jason uses, which is the real one, so we're good with that. It's a different dollar amount.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm good.
Thank you with that. And with that said, it appears that we have a fully unified board on this. So thank you, Commissioner Solari. Rolling Thunder, I believe that everyone is in agreement that the option is the best and most appropriate. I did want to add that when the cause for the Love of Paws first came out, I did not understand the concept of attempting to feed people's dogs. But that's not the gain. That's not the mission. One would believe that it is. But I just wanted to add and take this opportunity to say that there are many seniors who are foregoing their nourishment for their dogs. And you'd say, well, I guess they can get rid of their dogs and just eat well. But not therefore, we are not seniors. Some of us are closer. And
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I just pointed it out there, appearances. But that linkage is not working on your emotions. That linkage to normalcy is what Meals to Wheels does to the seniors, it's not what they eat, it's the contact. And the contact of one's pet is what very few people have. And the mission of that organization is not only feeding animals, but again, I had to come to understand it. There are actually people who are due for surgery and due for some clinical appointments that will need overnight stays, and they do not know what to do with their dogs, and they do not want to give them up. And this organization takes them and harbors them and does a lot of different things that, again, may be part of the collateral response from the Humane Society as well, and they work hand in hand. But there's a lot more than just doling out bags of food for pets. But I understand the board's thought process on it. I just ask you for the future to look at the other aspects, the collateral understanding to what that organization is, as opposed to what it appears to be. With that, okay, so we have a motion on the floor and a second, and we have not heard from the community. Is there anybody from the audience that wishes to speak regarding this next decision? Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners, county staff, and the public. I have comments. I gave this so much thought over the last few days, but now I will mostly be saying thank you, thank you, thank you. I am so gratified that many of the comments that I touched on, as far as how we are available 24/7 to the residents of Indian River County via phone, text, or chat, that you're clearly already very knowledgeable of that we're there for people who may even be suicidal. You understand that. I do want to make you feel even a little bit better about your decision, because I want to share with you a couple of comments about how very efficient we are with your dollars. We combine the funding we get from you, that $10,000, with funding from all over our 5-county service area, and multiply that into $1 million plus service that your residents get. We supplement that with grants and fundraising. We just were awarded a grant to replace all of our equipment, phones and computers. Had it not been for our ability to do that, if that were a county service, you would be looking at the cost of replacing that equipment. So again, we are, I believe that we are both there for your citizens whenever they need us, and provide an incredible value for the dollar. And I want to thank you for your service, for your insightful comments. I know it's not easy to make funding decisions, so thank you so much for giving that such good thought. Have a
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Bob Brignoli, the Executive Director of the Mental Health Association in Indian River County, and I also want to first thank you for funding us from the 2012 year to the present, and just express my appreciation for your acknowledgement of some of the vital work that not only we believe the Mental Health Association does, but the other agencies, and really filling a community need, be it a health need or otherwise. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning.
Hi, I'm Sergio Mota. Some of the commissioners may know me. This is the first time I'm speaking at the County Commission Chambers. I live in Sebastian, 365 Joy Haven Drive. I just appreciate the comments Commissioner Flesher made about For the Love of Paul Senior Pet Sanctuary. I know Ted Pankowitz is in the room right now to defend the organization, but just speaking as a humble volunteer of For the Love of Paul Senior Pet Sanctuary, they do fabulous work in our community. They donate cat and dog food to 15 food banks across the county, from the source, Meals on Wheels, to St. Vincent de Paul, and we even spread our resources outside of Indian River to Brevard, to St. Lucie, and all across the state of Florida. We receive phone calls every single day, and sometimes it's a little bit personal, but what I'll do is I'll wear a dog costume in 100-degree weather, because these are good people that constantly work hard for not only our community, but for the people that are senior citizens, that are veterans, that have fought and defended for the freedoms that we hold in this county, and they can't afford to feed their cat or dog whether it be Mark or Buddy, whatever their cat or dog's name is. And this organization, again, that started 2 years ago and has grown by leaps and bounds, and will reach the point where we'll probably expand into different other counties because the need is so great, not only, again, in our community, but across the state of Florida. And I'll give you a story. There was a girlfriend with her boyfriend, and the boyfriend had lost both of his legs. He was a veteran, and he lives in Sebastian. He takes 2 Go Line buses in order to get to Fellsmere to get that cat and dog food that we bag in little Ziploc bags. And I'm also appreciative not only of our citizens, but also the people that constantly give, that have meager resources in Sebastian, in Vero, all across our county, that give that bag of dog food, the employees at Walmart that work on minimum wage, that give that Ziploc bag, that don't have a cent or a silver spoon in their mouth, but they have a heart of gold, and they put their actions to work, and that's what I'm appreciative for. And again, I appreciate the comments Joe Flesher, Commissioner Flesher had made, because this organization that really is a young organization in terms of the level of years of experience in the nonprofit arena, but I implore the individuals, the commissioners and the citizens of the community to carefully look at this organization because it will grow. And again, thank you for allowing me to speak today, and thank you for the citizens that are in attendance. I appreciate it.
Mr. Mota, I want to thank you for your comments, and thank you for recognition, but I want to say that when I first spoke, I clearly stated that when I first heard of the organization, I shook my head. I did not understand what the meaning to the community was until I experienced it. So, with that, I'd like you to, at a bare minimum, come back and invite this board to see what is going on, the same way as we do with Meals on Wheels, where we do a ride-along, and to see if there's something that we can do to understand it better. I don't know if it'll change the outcome we've heard from the board, but most certainly to have a better understanding, because again, it took me some time to understand the process of how or why the dogs needed to be fed or cats needed to be fed until you get into the inner workings of the senior community, of the veterans community, and the needs that are not met and what they're doing to sacrifice within the 4 walls of their home.
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Deagle.
Good morning. I'm Karen Deagle. I'm the CEO of the Senior Resource Association. And like the others, thank you so much for making this decision. And thank you for supporting our programs for the last 6 years. As you're aware, the funding that we receive from you is the 10% match that's required for us to be able to bring down the federal and state dollars of just around $1 million to provide services to our seniors in our community. And just a couple numbers for you that equates to what those dollars do. In 2016, 13,000 hours of adult daycare services were provided, 30,602 hours of in-home services, 33,524 meals at the congregate sites, that's the 5 congregate sites, and another 53,000 meals were delivered to the homebound seniors. And that's just with the dollars, those public dollars that we receive. Additional services, of course, we do raise philanthropic dollars on top of that to the tune of over $600,000 that provide other services as well. So your dollars are very well spent. And so appreciate what you've decided today. Thank you. And I just wanted to make mention, I know Love for Paws does give us food. I want to be sure that you know that our seniors that we provide services to, actually we do receive food for their pets as well, because Commissioner Flesher, like you've said, very important that they maintain their whole family, and pets tend to be part of the family. So thank you very much.
Thank you,
and
Karen.
thank you to staff also for for putting all this together. Thank you.
You make it easy. Thank you for your, the relationship that you have with many volunteers, many volunteer organizations, and the school board in preparing the lunches and the financial arrangement, keeping the costs lower and more feasible for us to be able to reach out and serve those in need.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Well, we do have a motion on the floor in a second, and any further discussion here amongst the board? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Michael, you 2 for 2.
Thank you. Continuing on, the last item is federal grant subrecipient requirements, which in order to fulfill requirements of Part 200 of the Code of Federal Regulation, which addresses administrative requirements, cost principles, and audit requirements for federal awards, the external auditors recommended that Indian River County execute agreements with all federal grant subrecipients. So I've organized this along kind of the who, what, when, where, why. Existing federal grant subrecipients as delineated in the Indian River County Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or CAFR as it's known, include the Treasure Coast Homeless Services Council and the Senior Resource Association, or SRA. So what is it? The definition of subrecipient from Federal Uniform Grant Guidance Circular is a subrecipient means a federal, non-federal entity that receives a subaward from a pass-through entity to carry out part of a federal program, but does not include an individual that is a beneficiary of such program. A subrecipient may also be a recipient of other federal awards directly from a federal awarding agency. The key thing here is that in the CAFR, through the audit process, through the auditor's work and the finance department's work, Treasure Coast Homeless Services Council and Senior Resource Association are in fact the federal grant subrecipients meeting the definition, and as such would require the execution of subrecipient award agreements. So when would that occur? We recommend executing agreements with both of those organizations retroactive to the beginning of this fiscal year. The auditors, as part of the exit conference, talked about that was a missing component. Obviously, that is something that they'll be looking for in next year's audit process, so we want to be sure that those agreements are in place. And moving forward, we would obviously execute with any other federal grant subrecipients moving forward, and assuming the two organizations would continue, obviously we would maintain an annual agreement with those as well.
Mike, just, is there any cost to the agencies to do this other than a little administrative time to do the agreement?
No, not to my knowledge. I'll let Jeff add any comments.
Jeff Smith, Clerk of the Court and Comptroller again. No, there's not any additional cost to the agencies. This is a federal requirement that the subrecipients go through more compliance reviews. My internal auditor will be doing that. It will not be charged anymore to the agencies. There's a 6-page list of compliance things that we have to now be responsible for making sure that the agency complies with, and that the money is spent according to the way it's supposed to. But to answer your question, no, there's no additional charges to the subrecipients.
Okay, great, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'll move staff recommendation.
Second with a comment.
Susan got you, but
That's fine.
I'll
I'm
take
happy to
Susan's
defer to
second, but
Susan's.
your comment.
I just find it amazing that there's a 6-page compliance list for the sub-agreement, and this is, again, probably one of the reasons for keeping nonprofits as separate from government as you possibly can, because these are hidden costs, and basically we don't know what the true costs of these things are. And I'll just ask Jeff if he can try to make this as easy and painless for the subrecipients as possible. And I'll just add to the fact that we've had subrecipients out there that, based on how they understood the meaning of the federal documents, did not believe that they were subrecipients. So it gets very entangled and very complicated.
Yeah.
And this is one of the cases that, since it's the government that's putting this burden on us, I'd be very happy for the government, meaning you, Jeff, and your staff, to bear as much of this burden as possible.
Yes. We intend to work cooperatively with the two subrecipients. We have a good relationship with both of them. I don't anticipate it being any intense thing on their part. We don't want to interfere with the good work that they do in the community. We just have to comply with the federal mandates that are being passed down, and make sure that we're doing that so that when the external auditors come in, we're complying with what we're so that we are complying with what we're supposed to be doing as well. So yes, we will make it as painless as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further on the board? We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Adams. No discussion here. Is there any further discussion from the community? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. That concludes this item.
Thank you, Michael. 3 for 3.
That was fun, Mike. Come back soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, this wasn't exactly my cup of tea, the federal subrecipients, but we all got through it.
Thank you for a fine job. Next item on the agenda is the utility services, the North Sebastian Septic to Sewer S2S Phase 1, the bid for status of bid number 2017-046. I see Vincent Burke and Arjuna.
Before we get started, Chair, I have gotten word that Kate has had an opportunity to present our resolution to the City Council. And I just kind of want to see the wishes of the commission. Would you like her to stay and monitor that meeting, or would you like her to come back to make her legislative report to the commission today, or would you prefer just another day? It's just looking for what
Pleasure of the board.
Yeah, pleasure of the board on the issue.
Personally, I believe her efforts are best spent where they are now.
I will let her know to stay there. Thank you.
Do we have?
That's fine.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Burke.
All right. Thank you, Chairman, members of the board, those who are still left in the audience. For the record, my name is Vincent Burke, Director of Utility Services. I'm joined to my right by Arjuna Varagoda, Capital Projects Manager, and we're here to update the board based upon the bid results for bid number 2017-046. So just a quick history on how we got to this timeline. We did a history of the presentations. We approved the initial allocations. We were directed by the board to go out for bid. We received those bids, and we're here to present some options for board consideration with staff recommendation. Just a quick timeline. If you really look at the last 4 items on the septic to sewer history, we made a financing option update to the City of Sebastian. We came to the Board of County Commissioners in December of last year. We were directed at that time to move ahead with several items, and staff worked to get the bid specs and the package together to go out for bid, which we did do and received those bids. Bid opening on the 12th of April, and are going to share those results today. So the approved allocations based on the 20th of December was an initial estimate of $1.97 million. That was for the construction portion only. That did not include any soft costs. And this was initially the cost breakdown approved by the board at that time. 33% was a St. Johns River Water Management District cost share grant, up to a maximum amount of $649,240. There is a 20% split between the utility assessment fund and the optional sales tax. $393,000 and change, and the owner assessment portion on a per ERU basis on the bottom right of $2,330. Again, 27% of the construction cost to be borne by the owner of the property at that time. Again, that was based on a $1.97 million initial opinion of probable cost. However, the bids that went out were much higher than anticipated, and we've summarized the bids in the agenda packet in here as well, with the 3 bidders on the left-hand side, and the total price. Timothy Rose Contracting is the lowest responsible bid that has been received at $2.977 million. We must note that there's an error in the agenda packet. We sent out an update. Thanks to the county administrator's assistant, we were able to do that in a timely fashion. The bid submitted by Blue Goose Construction was considered to be non-responsive for the very reason that they were supposed to have provided an update to the purchasing department by a certain date and time. They did not do that. They were supposed to provide a hard copy signed in the same manner that the original bid was submitted to the purchasing department. That was not the case, hence their bid was deemed to be non-responsive. In any event, there was a clerical error with the number submitted by Blue Goose initially, which had warranted them to resubmit a lower bid based on the bid specification, section 01025 for the mobilization charges. They did that, but even by doing that, their bid was still higher than the lowest bid, Tim Rose Construction. So $2.97 million is the number that we're looking at for the updated financing mechanism. And we have 3 options to present for the board to consider today. Option 1 is the grant funding, optional sales tax, and utility fund contributions would be held the same. However, the increased cost of the project, the about $1 million delta, would be borne by the property owners, bringing their assessment from 27% of the construction cost up to about 52%. Option 2 would keep the percentages the same that were initially allocated, which would increase the assessment fund amount and optional sales tax amount. 20% of the construction cost increases the total amount. The owner would still be required to do a higher portion, about 38.2% of the construction cost. And option 3 would be to, in essence, transfer the balance of the impact fee funding dollars that initially were anticipated to be allocated for all the parcels, not only the improved properties, but also the vacant properties. And we have a summary of that tabulation on the bottom of the screen. If that option is selected, the cost to the owner would be just about 41% for the construction cost. And again, the bottom right is just a quick calculation to show the dollar amounts that would be allocated from the impact fee reserves to the optional sales tax contribution, which we summarized in the agenda packet. Here they are in tabular form. Again, looking at the option 1 is this amount right here is the cost share grant, the first line, the $649,240. While it was initially 33% of the construction cost, that was based on OPC, opinion of probable cost of 1.97. In this case, it was a maximum amount. Even though the bid prices went up, that cannot change. And we actually reached out to the district to see if there might be some dollars available to do 33% of the actual construction cost of 2.97. But they said that that was a maximum amount. So that figure at about 22% remains consistent throughout all 3 of the options. Again, option 1 is to keep the percentages the same, or the dollar amounts, which lowers the percentage overall for the construction amount, and a much higher owner assessment portion, about 52%. Option 2 just keeps the percentages the same, increase the dollar amount from what was initially allocated in December 20th board meeting. The owner portion is about 38%. Again, the per ERU portion is shown on the bottom. This is the bottom line, so to speak. If you recall, it was $2,330 that was initially approved on the 20th. You can see the price have gone up from that time. And then option 3 is to reallocate those impact fee dollars that we had discussed, that $335,000 and change that would be added to the initial amount to bring it up to $728,999 from the optional sales tax, to bring a per ERU amount of just over $5,000. Again, this is just for the construction portion of the project. Here's a tentative schedule. on May of this year is looking to award the project today. If directed by staff, we would prepare the resolutions 1 and 2 for the mandatory assessment. We are scheduled to go up to the City of Sebastian and on the agenda for the 24th to update the City Council pending the decision from today. And we would then work with our contractor to hold off on issuing the notice to proceed until Resolution 3, the confirming resolution, has been approved by the board. So we're looking to finish the project in May or summer of 2018. When we applied for the grant, we told the district that we would be under construction in January of this year. So we're a little bit behind schedule based on some timing issues, but certainly they're going to work with us to try to make it so that we are still in compliance with the St. Johns River Water Management District grant. So today we have a couple items for board consideration. Staff recommends that the project be awarded to Timothy Rose Contracting in the amount of $2,977,931.58 as the lowest responsive and responsible bid. And note, as mentioned earlier, that the notice to proceed to the contractor will only be issued if and when Resolution 3 is approved by this board. We'd like the board to consider approving the county's updated or revised funding mechanism based on the bids that have been received, which would be option 3, is to allocate the additional dollars towards the optional sales tax contribution, increasing that to about 25%, with the final property owner assessment of just over $5,000 per ERU, or roughly 41% of the construction cost. We'd also would like the board to direct staff to move ahead with the assessment procedures for the Resolution 1 and 2 based on this new updated construction bid. We will work with the City of Sebastian. I had mentioned I'm bringing an update to the City Council now on the 24th, but we'd certainly work with the city to make sure their residents that are inside of the city that are affected, the property owners rather, would be apprised of the situation. And we would hold any and all necessary public meetings for those property owners and interested parties to learn about the project. And lastly, there is an approved attached sample agreement in the backup that we would like the board to approve. So if there's any questions, I'm certainly available for those questions. We do have the engineer of record, Mr. Masteller, Earl Masteller, who's in the building, as well if there's any technical questions with regards to the contract. I would say in closing that, my staff is disappointed that the project came in much higher than what was initially anticipated. We feel that this is to be a very good project for a number of reasons. One, for the environmental considerations of trying to put centralized sewer in an area that really has not been served for quite some time, has been constrained by some of the septic tanks, and would be an economic driver for that area. As we heard from a gentleman earlier today, the developers are here, they're coming. The residential areas started to increase. We in the utility area are getting about 90, on average about 85 or 90 new water meter installs a month. So they're coming, and this commercial area that has suffered for quite some time could certainly need a boost in terms of the economic driver that would benefit from having a centralized sewer system, so that if and when development comes, it can be done in our environmentally friendly fashion. So thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to present. I'm certainly available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Thank you, Arjuna. Commissioner Zorc.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a general question. With the West Wabasso also coming in quite a bit higher than what we budgeted in this one, do we need to, as we go forward, come up with a different factor to apply to the engineer's estimates? Maybe it's market condition, demand, something. So when we're looking at partnering with the other groups, now with St. John's, it wouldn't have necessarily changed their dollar amount at this point in the game, but that West Wabasso was also a six-figure number over what our estimate was, and this is up there as well. It's just so as we're, and I don't know, it's an estimate based on something, but we need to put something with it that gets us truer to what the likely real cost is more likely to be. Secondly, in trying to figure out another way to revisit the cost share grant, is there a very simple piece of this project that we could temporarily take off to reapply for a segment of it where we could go back and redip into the St. John's Fund for a second allocation? Or is this looked at them by as one continuous project we took a $800,000 portion off, reapplied back to them to a grant, and then changed order it back to the contractor and brought it back into the project again. I don't know if there's a way to use their system to reapply for funds by breaking the project into 2 pieces versus 1 piece. And that's just, I don't know if that's possible.
I mean, certainly it's possible, but we were just looking from a timing standpoint.
Right.
The grant was based upon the initial phase 1 commercial area, so just hypothetically speaking, we could go back and work with the contractor to carve out a certain area only. We would certainly have to modify that. We would then have to modify the agreement to just do that portion, but certainly that can be done. It's just a matter of time, and we were.
Right. And we don't want to stop the starting of the project, so it would be something that wouldn't be in the essential starting area, but that's.
I mean, even with this proceeding ahead, based on the timeline, we're still not going to break ground till late summer anyway.
Right.
And then you have to look at hurricane season and some of those issues as well. So that's on the best case scenario, and I think what you're proposing is good to try to carve out some areas, but it just adds some time delay to the project. Yep.
Well, maybe we'll look at that as an idea as we look at other projects, is maybe break them into pieces to where we can go to these agencies more than once and not get capped out because the size of the project has grown. That would just give us some flexibility. We could award it all at one time, but if we go to the agencies, we could say for this one, we're asking for this, and just try to maximize the leverage, our dollars, to reduce obligations for our residents.
Yeah, and we have, just to your first comment, looked at the way that we're looking at some of these bid projects. We're actually seeing an increase not only with utility projects, but with roadway projects. FDOT has recently gone out, and even their engineers and estimators were well below what the bids came in for a project out on 17th Street. So certainly, I think what was mentioned in the agenda is, I think contractors are busy. Certainly the prices reflect that, and I think we would have gotten some of these better prices 3-4 years ago than we're experiencing today.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The only concern is with splitting this up would be, demobilization, mobilization, all that remains constant. I believe it might drive up the price as well, so we might offset the possibility of granting with the cost factors associated with the smallest project.
Because you would not
scope and
want to
size.
trigger a mobilization fee twice,
Right.
clearly.
So I think we have to do this case by case and ask staff to analyze both avenues before we go forward any further where we've already engaged with the granting process.
Right.
Absolutely. Commissioner Adams.
Yes, 2 comments. One, I would echo that it's probably time to up our estimates and what we are expecting on that. Obviously, we're in just a new reality than what we're used to. I think too that while I am still committed to this project being done, I think it's very important for the economic development of that corridor and for Sebastian in general, particularly opening up some of those opportunities along that US 1 corridor. It is unfortunate that the bids came back as they did. I appreciate the reworking of the packages, and I'm interested to hear what the other commissioners have to say.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too wish to move this forward. And I would like to see us try to take the option that reduces the burden as much as we can. As we've talked about before, these are existing businesses that already have a working sewage disposal system. Now, it may be septic, it may not be the best, but they have paid for a sewer disposal system on their properties. And government is coming in and saying, we want you to pay for a new sewage disposal system for the benefit of the lagoon and the benefit of the community. So I think we're asking them to shoulder the cost, but the entire community benefits. So anything we can do to get that cost as low as possible would be the option that I'd be in favor of.
Thank you. Commissioner Solari?
Nothing to add, Mr. Chairman.
Is there anybody from the audience that wishes to speak regarding this action? 2 podiums. Thank you. Commissioners, there are several elements of this decision. If they're all consistent with staff, we can consolidate it into one motion. Otherwise, we will have several motions involved. So,
Mr. Chairman,
take a stab at it?
I'll take a stab, and I'd like to recommend that we go with option 2, which would hold the percentages the same as we approved prior.
Right.
And that would result in the lowest cost per ERU to the owner. And we can do it two ways. We can do it with the numbers that's presented in option 2. If the board feels strongly that they don't want to increase the amount coming from the utility assessment fund, then we could keep it the same as the 393 and then just add the difference from the sales tax to get to the same total. I can go either way, but the bottom line is I'd like the numbers to add up to option 2, which would be the lowest ERU cost to the owner.
And that's a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Adams. Any further discussion on the board?
And just, I haven't heard anything, so if we go with as presented in option 2 would be the motion right now.
And I assume, Commissioner, that you're wrapping into your motion all the other aspects of the staff recommendation?
Of awarding the bid and...
Yes, just
and then also
award the bid,
to proceed
schedule the timeline, do phase 1 resolutions.
And conduct the meetings.
Conduct the meetings.
And the sample agreement.
All that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is that clear, Madam Clerk? Thank you. Okay, so anyone else have any comments? Any comments from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1 with Commissioner Solari dissenting. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just because I appreciate Commissioner Solari's comments on these usually, and just with his indulgence, just could ask, Commissioner, were you just opposed to the whole option 2 item at all, or just how the funds were broken up?
The only one I possibly could have supported today would have been option 1.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't see any reason to argue or fight about it.
No, but I appreciate I just want to, because I do appreciate your thoughts and comments on this, and just want to, but that's fine, that's good, thank you.
Mr. Chairman? Are we going to be okay on that, Commissioner?
Yeah, I understand where Commissioner Solari is coming from.
Back a few months ago when we brought this item forward to get it to where we're at today, the motion that Commissioner O'Brien made also included a second part where utilities was going to bring forward, start working on a rate study, and I'm just curious to see where that may be, since they were kind of tied in the original motion that started this.
We have reached out to a firm that is familiar with Indian River County's rate study, the company that initially had done the rate study in 1999. So we're in negotiations and discussions with them on how to frame that scope of work, and so that's under review at this time.
Okay.
We're hoping to do that and then come up to the board once we have that information. So we have been working on it, we just don't have anything to present today.
Good, thank you for the update.
And Commissioner Adams mentioned that it probably is the appropriate time to ensure that we're estimating accordingly as we go forward. And again, I shared that same concern with Mr. Burke. It's ironic that we look forward to economic recovery, and in doing so, in estimating the economic recovery, it has been extremely difficult in projecting cost factors. And then Mr. Burke had said that he had some concerns about looking into a crystal ball as to where it was going to go. I understand that the estimates did fall short, but rightfully so. We are in that rather robust recovery mode. Things are happening rather quickly, and it's very difficult. By the time the pen hits the parchment for the design, the price has already increased, and it's very difficult to come back. And that's why we're having several meetings for one particular item or project. So it is difficult. But I do agree that perhaps maybe there's a better logarithm to get there.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, if I could to that, you know, we have been hit with this over the last several months.
In other areas.
And we're adjusting to it. I do want to point out we adjusted to it a few months ago. We said we're going to increase we're going to try and increase our estimates going forward on our water projects, on our road projects, all of our construction projects. We're seeing this, and we did make that adjustment a couple months ago. However, this is an estimate that we were last to the board on December with, and that's where that number was. So this was like already in the pipeline, no pun intended, that we were committed to that lower number. Definitely going forward, we're cognizant of the higher costs of labor and materials out there in the competitive environment. And we are making those adjustments going forward. Just did want to point out that this is a number we had committed to some time ago, and had been created by the engineer longer ago than that, because it was also used to support the grant application. So there was a timing differential, and we're definitely trying to adjust for that component going forward.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is county attorney matters regarding demolition liens, and I see Councilor DeBrawl here.
Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and move staff recommendation unless there's any owners in the audience that wish to speak.
Second.
And I see a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Solari. Is there anyone on the board that wishes to make anything further? Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to come forward regarding these recording of the liens? Nothing further? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Fine presentation, William.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You prepared for hours, too. Next is the agreement for the on-the-job training for the ARC of Indian River County, Inc. And we have Councilor Dylan Reingold.
Thank you very much. Last year, the Board of County Commissioners had directed the County Attorney's Office and staff to work on developing a jobs training program that would offer on-the-job training for young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Since that time, staff in the County Attorney's Office has worked with the ARC of Indian River County and also the Florida Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. As a result of that, working together, we have developed the attached agreement between Indian River County and the ARC of Indian River County. Under the agreement, ARC will essentially provide the Human Resources Director with some qualified candidates. The HR Director will then research and coordinate with the departments to figure out if there's a place we can put this student. Additionally, it also allows for sort of the opposite to happen, in which the HR Director could reach out to ARC and say, hey, we've got a need, or we think we've got a slot. Is there something is there a student you'd be able to provide us with? Under the contract, neither party is either obligated to hire or to place the student. Under the agreement, the student would work no more than 8 hours a week and a maximum of 30 hours. And Indian River County would provide sort of a job progress report back to the ARC to be hopefully helpful for the employee or for the student. Simply recommend that the chair open up for any public comment today and approve the agreement as presented. I will note that I believe Mr. Bradley is here, and from ARC, and I'd like to thank him for, one, being patient, and two, working with us on preparing this agreement. It took a little while to work through some of the issues with the Florida Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go ahead and move the board approve and authorize the chairman to sign the agreement for the on-the-job training between Indian River County and the ARC of Indian River County.
Second. Yep. I'll yield to you, Commissioner Adams. I think that's appropriate. Thank you. We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Solari, seconded by Commissioner Adams. I have to say, Councilor, that this agreement is spectacular. And I think that you were surprised, right? You surprised your own work, and thank you for the agreement. I think the citizens of Indian River County are going to benefit greatly, and I am excited about the model for mentoring and partnership so that we can get the good work done in the community, we can get the good work done at the county, and we're affording an opportunity that would otherwise go unchecked or unserved. And very excited I want to say that I don't know if anybody's interested in being mentored for the county commission positions, but we are open for any and all positions. Would you like to say a few words? I would. Yes.
We'll make sure the HR department contacts the Board of County Commissioners office when we
And the
do get a
supervisor
candidate.
elections as well.
First of all, I'd like to thank the county and the commissioners for putting this together. It's going to make a huge difference in folks with special needs lives. Believe it or not, in the last 2 years of high school, which, you know, that could be 20, 21, 21, 22, there are 200 of these kids in this community, so it is a big deal. And to my knowledge, we are the first to come to an agreement with the county and an agency to put this together in the state of Florida. So that also is a big deal. And I look forward in a year coming back to the commissioners and presenting what we've accomplished together. So again, thank you so much.
We're excited. Commissioners? Anybody else from the audience? Okay, we'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you. Looking forward to the great work.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move the approval of the meetings of the Solid Waste Disposal District from February 21st, March 7th, and March 21st.
Second.
That's a motion by Commissioner Solari, seconded by Commissioner Adams. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. We've covered all the agenda items.
Mr. Chairman,
But
you've forgotten, you haven't allowed me to make the motion for the work order number 5 to Geosyntec for 1 year of groundwater monitoring, reporting, and related consulting services for the former South Gifford Road landfill, the gift that keeps on gifting to the consultants we hired to do this. Thank you,
you are going to make that motion?
You know, I pride myself on doing something difficult at every meeting, and this is the difficult thing I'll do today. Move approval and staff recommendation.
And that was a motion by Commissioner Solari. I can repeat that a second time if you wish. And seconded by Commissioner Adams.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to point out that there is good news in this contract, that DEP is requiring a little bit less monitoring.
Yeah, but at the rate
So there is progress.
But at the rate that they're decreasing the cost of this for monitoring, I will not only be off the board before this no longer comes before this, I will be buried deeper in the landfill.
Poke the bear.
This is the fun part of the meeting.
You never know.
When Bob gets on a diatribe, you gotta go with him, man. It's a thing of beauty.
I think we should give the property back to the city or
You
something.
never know which
then we
portion
could.
of an agenda item is going to push a commissioner to stand before and step up to the plate on an item. And I think the reduction in services, or even the very thought of reduction of services, has probably pushed Commissioner Solari to champion this agenda item. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. Vinny, great presentation. Before we close up, is there anybody else that wishes to speak regarding this significant decision that was set forth today? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is unanimous. Before we depart, Councilor, is there any real-time updates on the item in which we had to forego, as far as Kate being over in the city of Vero Beach? Do you have any updates?
I do not have an update. Yeah, I received a text message earlier from Kate that she had made her speech very short and sweet, and she'll be giving me an update as soon as she can.
I thank you for that, and I guess we could look forward to the state legislative final report at a future date and time. So, thank you much. The meeting is adjourned.